that they're rushing this through, or is it just popped up just recently?
So I could be a little cynical and say that, the Art Museum is a respected institution in the community and might have used that to get a fast pass to council. That's just speculation on my part. I don't want to point fingers. So I don't know if there's a reason why slowing it down would cause issues for the project. Not sure.
I mean, if it's not going to cause issues with the project, I would be okay requesting we take a look at it. I mean, I don't know that we still would have jurisdiction, but we would at least get a look at it.
Right. I think we could have an opinion. I don't think we have jurisdiction.
So I guess out of curiosity, as somebody who is usually involved in the design of projects like that, although not that one, I can tell you that schedule is always of the essence. It's rarely that there's time kind of in the design schedule to allow for additional process. That being said, I know nothing about their process. So I guess my question, kind of maybe back to you, Susan, is if we were to invite kind of someone to come speak to us about that, if they were willing and able to, what's the soonest we could get them on the agenda?
My recommendation would be to get a note out from you, Kat, in the next day or two. And then for me to have a conversation with, actually I'll meet with Leah this afternoon anyway, later after this meeting, and then also have a conversation with Saltzman's office and just see if we can't get a briefing at our next meeting, even if it's a briefing.
Okay.
I think that would give you an opportunity. It will be at council, right? So,
Right. So I guess the question is, are we going to ask council to push it out to a later agenda so we can render an opinion?
sure. And if for some reason we can't, I also think it sounds like there's a lot of at least strong consensus around parts of this, is my guess. And there may be parts that people are leaning different ways. So we could do this rather quickly.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Chris, is there an issue, or do you just want to understand and see what they're doing, or are you aware of some problem that you don't?
Well, today it's a path to get from the park blocks to the streetcar stop. It's accessible right now for most of the day. The museum is allowed to close at certain hours if they want to. It's accessible to all modes. The ordinance that's in front of council would prohibit bicycles, would prohibit dogs, which I think means that some portion of the homeless population that likes to have dogs would not be able to use that as an access point. So yeah, I'm concerned that, as I said, there are slippery slopes as we start modifying pedestrian easements and we essentially see connections go away and not become available. And I would want to take a hard look and see if that's what's happening here.
So how about if we, maybe you can send me a couple of bullets of things you want in that letter, and then in terms of just slowing it down, and then we can send that out as a draft to you, Kat, and then you could send it.
I guess I'm okay with that, but I first want to see that we as a group agree that that's something we want to kind of pursue.
Shall I make a motion?
Sure,
Does that
go
help?
ahead.
Okay, I move that we send a letter to City Council and Director Treat asking that, one expressing concern about the loss of access to transit in general, and ask for the opportunity to review this particular request before it goes to City Council so we could potentially render a recommendation.
Second.
So moved. Any other additional comments? Go ahead, Jeff, and then Michelle.
I guess since we don't have jurisdiction, so I understand this is sort of an advisory action, I guess I would ask in the letter that we say, we hope there's time, or I wouldn't want to ask that the process be slowed down for our benefit.
Well, it's scheduled to be to council on the 20th of this month, so if it doesn't slow down, we won't have an opportunity to look at it.
Okay.
Michelle?
So do we know what the standards are for the city council decision on it?
I just know what I read in the ordinance, which I think everybody got an email yesterday.
And the city council is taking public testimony on the 20th?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Mike?
Yeah, comment on whether something's in our purview or not. When we became the went from the Planning Commission to the Planning and Sustainability Commission, one of the things we articulated in terms of our priorities would be we would be able to feel free to bring up issues that we may not necessarily have purview over with regard to zoning and codes and so forth. So I think it's entirely appropriate as we see things that seem problematic to all of us or some people on the commission, that's okay to go outside of our, what people normally think of as our narrowly defined purview.
Any other comments? If not, let's go ahead and call a roll. Julie?
I see we're back to alphabetical. Too. I'm going to vote no.
Yes.
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 Yes. I have to say, part of it, if they had more time, I would be very supportive of this. And especially just the request to have them come to us and have a discussion about it. I think in general, not having full grasp of all of the issues, I am kind of supportive of them doing that. So perhaps that informs why I would vote no. But that being said, the motion passes. So Susan, if you could go ahead and work with me, and I'll get something drafted and take it forward.
Right, and we could have this on the April 25th session here, so pardon? Yeah, we need to know by Thursday in terms of noticing. So we'll do that, and I'll get a conversation going with both Saltzman's office and Transportation.
Perfect, great, thank you. Any other items of interest? Andre?
On this item, if for some reason council chooses not to slow down, could you let us know also?
Yeah. And you could choose as a commission and/or as individuals to go to council, obviously, and testify.
Any other items of interest? Eli?
There's more to share about accessory dwellings and small homes than I want to say right now, but there's a lot going on. But one thing to put on the calendar, November 3rd and 4th of this year, Portland will be hosting a Build Small, Live Large Summit. We did it a few years ago, 300 people there. Last year, or 2 years ago, 500. It's at Portland State University. And this year, as Portland is kind of an epicenter for this type of housing nationally, we're looking to extend the geographic invitations. I think we'll get there are a lot of cities that are looking to see what Portland is doing and copying us and trying to figure out how did we end up with 2/3 as many ADU permits as single-family homes last year. It's pretty extraordinary, and I think that some people might be interested in joining in. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Eli. Any other items? I have a brief one. And this is especially to the probably DOZA subcommittee members, but to everybody. The final report or recommendation is completed, and it's out there for review. If you haven't seen it, let me know, and we can get that circulated. It goes in front of council on April 26th, I believe. Is that correct? And I do plan on representing the DOZA subcommittee and the PSC on that. So I'm kind of, I guess, poking all of you as a reminder, especially to those on the subcommittee, if there's any additional items that we have not captured in that previous letter, or if, as you read the final recommendations, if there's things you want to add, we're looking to get kind of that revised and out soon as possible, I believe this week. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just so you know, I did set up a meeting, I'm not sure what the date is at this point, with some of the neighborhood folks, Linda Netikoven and some other folks, to sit down with staff to go through some of their outstanding issues.
Is that this week?
Yeah, it got moved forward, I think. At any rate, just so you're aware of that.
Okay,
Is the updated report already out? I missed that.
yes.
Okay, I'll find that. Thanks.
Right, Sandra? I'm like, I think I have the link. I've had the flu for about a week, so I'm still catching up. Go ahead, Jeff.
Can just, those of us who are not on the subcommittee, can we get a full packet? Whatever this letter is, whatever the current.
I think your mic's not on. But, oh, it's hard to hear you guys. Maybe it's just my head. Sorry.
I just wanted to be sure we get a link to it or a whatever electronically, whatever is out there, because I haven't been in the loop at all on this.
between both of our sicknesses, we've been playing email tag. So the report is out, and it consists of 2 volumes, the main recommendations and the findings, and then the appendices. We're going to the Design Commission on this Thursday, and then we'll come to the full Planning Commission, Planning Sustainability Commission on April 25th, and then on the 26th, we're at council. But we're trying to get the letter from the subcommittee finalized, obviously, before the 25th, so that we can be prepared for the 26th.
But can you send us the link to everything? Just
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandra. Any other items of interest? I guess not. So Susan, Director's Report?
Thank you. First off, I want us to all recognize Ms. Catherine Schultz. She will be honored with a 2017 Women of Influence Award by the Portland Business Journal. And I know there were 250 applicants and 225 people. The chair and the mayor's climate agenda is a two-year plan. I don't have enough copies for everyone, but you can share. We announced it yesterday, and the main change or the addition in terms of just pulling out some of the action items from the climate action plan is setting a goal to meet all of our energy needs for all of the community, residential, business, industrial, and transportation by 2050 through renewable resources, and doing all of our electricity sources by 2035, so in the next 18 years. This is a stretch goal, but it's also one that is technically quite doable. So we're excited about it and very excited to have his leadership and the chair's leadership also. So if you have more questions about that, feel free to give me a shout about that. Another item is a call for help from a couple of you, because some of you haven't been on a subcommittee lately. PDC is focusing on affordable commercial space, and we talked about this as part of the comprehensive plan. Yesterday, Joe sent you an email asking if you are interested in helping them. They're recruiting a couple of folks. It's going to be a group that only meets maybe 3 or 4 times. So we would like to have 2 of you. If you have any interest, you can let me know or let Kat know. I think it's going to be really interesting. We're working with Johnson Economics to help explore sort of the marketing and economic issues around how do we create more equitable and affordable commercial space in different parts of the city. So if anyone's interested, you can indicate now, or we can, or just follow up in the next, hopefully in the next day or 2 with either Kat or myself. That would be great. And finally, logistics. Julie, of course, wants me to mention that starting in May, we won't be meeting in here. So May, June, July, and August, we will be meeting a couple doors down at CH2M Hill. They're going to be remodeling this space and updating it and such. That's been coming for a long time. So we will send out friendly reminders before so you don't show up at the wrong space. But that's coming up.
Thank you. Okay, next item is the consent agenda. Consideration of the minutes from March 14th.
Move adoption?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? That's moved as approved. And finally, apologies, Congressman Blumenauer. We are quite behind the agenda, but we appreciate your patience and are very excited to have you here with us today. So it's your turn to come on up.
Before you get started, I would like to say a couple words about Earl, and I've known Earl for, yeah, it is. I've known Earl for, well, I'll say the mid-'90s. I'll just say '90s to be fair. But I was working at the city of Portland, and Earl was a commissioner and council, and we went out and did cheap and skinny streets in East Portland, and now they call them affordable. But it really has been a pleasure knowing Earl over the years and working with him on different transportation projects. And his just knowledge and perseverance for transit, for ensuring that transit is everywhere. I mean, and is for everyone, has been fun to work with, fun to be part of, and I'm glad we got you here finally to talk to us, and I just thank you.
Thank you, Andre. It was great fun at the time dealing, and you epitomized, I think, with what some of your colleagues in the Portland Department of Transportation and the Bureau, the art of engineering, not just the science. And I think it's epitomized by what has happened in terms of the evolution of this commission beyond just a planning commission. To be able to deal with sustainability and broader community impacts. We were just talking about extending the notion to affordable commercial space. It was my pleasure during my tenure at the city to be associated with the Planning Bureau, be able to help get, other than present company, a very august group of people in the Planning Commission and work with outstanding professionals in that agency. And I am pleased with what happened in the course of those 10 years. But in effect, because we weren't looking as comprehensively, and frankly, we were, I think, a little surprised by how quickly some of the things happened. We weren't prepared for how rapidly the Albina Community Plan, for example, would actually take hold. And you're expanding the concept to deal with affordable commercial space and being able to make neighborhoods that are accessible for everybody and to manage the forces of change to solve problems rather than create new ones, I think is to be commended. I am here just to have a brief conversation, maybe a tiny bit of update on some of the things in the federal government. Don't give up on the federal government yet. Although I will say, and in fact, I think, Madam Chair, we were meeting with some of your friends, younger professionals in the design community, and at that point we were talking about the need to reframe the federal partnership, which needs to be adjusted. And we're going with the current crew and some of the things we're going to have a chance maybe to do that a little faster than we anticipated. But I think there's some real opportunities. I don't know how many of you read the article in the Sunday Times that talked about that main streets are dead and they're not coming back. And I spent a couple of days sketching a response to that because I think the author got it wrong. Main streets aren't dead. Part of what you've been doing is helping revitalize arterials in our community that are the functional equivalent of those main streets to try and be more accessible and in a balanced environment. I would just say three things in terms of even in this environment, we are working hard to be able to maintain and even strengthen some elements of the federal partnership. We've got significant support, for example, in the protection of historic properties. We actually got the reauthorization passed. We have some work to try and modernize the tax credit. People understand those elements. We are working, actually I've reintroduced legislation to raise the gas tax for the first time in 24 years so we can actually pay for some of the vast unmet infrastructure needs that we face, and that the federal government plays its part in that partnership. Not all, maybe not even most, but it's important particularly for things that are multimodal, multi-jurisdictional, sometimes multi-state, and certainly multiple years, that we have that federal linkage. And it's interesting that one of the few things that it looks like the Senate Democrats and the Trump administration agree on is the need to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. Slight differences on exactly what it would be spent on, and no consensus about how to pay for it. But I still think, nonetheless, that there's some real opportunity in this climate. We are working to try and make sure that we retain the community development block grants that would be allegedly zeroed out, and other resources that deal with environmental protection that you've been able to take advantage of here at the city. We have been working to try and make affordable housing part of the equation across the board. We're all in the housing business, and that is a driver in communities large and small from coast to coast. It's tied up in social policy, economic policy, land use and transportation. Hopefully, we're going to see some movement. We've been trying to make sure that transportation initiatives include housing as a part of that, be able to have more flexibility. I have actually an initiative that I would leave with you, seeking any advice and counsel that some of you may have, to repurpose some of the federally financed transportation and housing assets that the city has. Under current federal policy, if those are repurposed, the money's paid back. The money's paid back either the amount that was given, if it's a park and ride lot or some such asset, the money that's paid back, or the current value, whichever is greater. A significant disincentive for repurposing. And my notion is that in this climate in Washington, there ought to be more interest in terms of giving some local control and latitude. And my hope would be that we might be able to get consensus that those assets would in effect be treated as the functional equivalent of a grant. And that if TriMet or the City of Portland, the State Department of Transportation, wanted to repurpose them, that they would be able to do so. And it would be a relatively simple, like sort of a grant application that as long as certain criteria were met, you can't give it to somebody's brother-in-law. I mean, it has to be transparent. It's got to be consistent with the original goal and intent, but not the precise, exact use, and that money might be repurposed to serve as an asset that would make it easier to deal with projects going forward. I continue to be keenly interested in orphan highways. It was something, when I was here, we did some renegotiation with the state because there's too many state facilities the state can't afford, really doesn't want, that play critical roles in local government that are the functional equivalent of main streets. Sandy, 82nd, Lombard, Powell, where the state really doesn't have the resources to be able to deal with them, and they are not as sympathetic to, for a variety of reasons, to the concerns that the city and the neighborhoods have for their utilization. And there is somewhere in there a win-win for being able to repurpose those facilities and being able to make them actually city streets and be able to have the characteristics that are necessary to reach your goals for housing, for transit access, for affordable commercial space. And it's a dramatically underutilized asset. And I think there ought to be broad interest. I've had this conversation literally from coast to coast. Everybody's facing the functional equivalent of their 82nd Avenue, their McLaughlin. And it might be a way, working with the state, the region, and the federal government, to be able to get some resources to solve, again, areas that have been historically problematic. I am particularly interested in the work that you are doing in the eastern part of the 3rd Congressional District. It's been an area that has been challenging because it has been underserved by the governments that had jurisdiction. Multnomah County, back in the day, and there's nobody alive now who is responsible for it, but really, it wasn't very artful. Massive arterials and permitting development without having adequate sanitation. It would have cost no more at the time to have developers put in sewer systems, but nobody wanted to go through the details. And so we were faced with a problem of putting 14 million gallons of raw sewage into the aquifer every day, and those poor people had to pay twice. And it was an item of certain controversy. And it really wasn't fair, because they did have to pay twice, and it was an area that was economically challenged and didn't have the base. Right now, the people east of 82nd pay a property tax premium because of the bizarre way that the property tax limitation was inflicted and limiting property tax increases to just 3%. The communities that have exploded in value are paying proportionately less in terms of their property tax. And the people in the David Douglas, Park Rose, Centennial districts pay disproportionately more. They're cranky, and they should be. And we still have unmet needs in terms of development, in terms of recreation, in terms of transportation. We're not going to solve those things overnight. I'm pleased that there has been greater attention given and being able to work with some of the people in the legislature and ODOT, the city and the county. But this is a challenge that we all face sooner rather than later, because there's tremendous opportunity to deal with affordable housing, increased units, but needing to be done in a way that, that speaks to some of the inequities that we have and the need for more investment. And I welcome thoughts that you have with what you're doing going forward, how we open up the channels, how we involve people in the process, how we help people understand some of the difficulties in doing these things quickly, and rather harnessing the forces of planning going forward. I'm already prattling on longer than I wanted to. I apologize, but I wanted to put a few things out. I'm happy to deal with any questions and happy to explore with you going forward if there are things that occur to you that we think that we ought to be exploring, realizing your objectives, ideas that you have for legislation, dealing with this administration, and frankly, working with the other jurisdictions, the state, the region, the city, and the county, because we all serving a population that really needs our best in a time when there's a lot of controversy, and change, if we're not careful, is going to create more problems than it solves.
Thank you very much. If you open the door, I know there's people all excited to ask you some questions. Do you still have some time to stay with us and take some?
And I would welcome comments that people have if any of this makes any sense. I'm just going to secure something to drink, and I will be right back.
Okay. So I'll just kind of Chris, and then I certainly know Katie has something, and then Mike, we'll start there.
Well, thank you, Congressman. Infrastructure is always a concern, and I'm very interested in your thoughts on how to engage with the current federal government around that. Two of the things that we've benefited strongly here in Portland and the region are Tiger grants that have been a key funder for active transportation projects. Obviously, we're a regular applicant to the transit programs. The Trump budget blueprint zeroes out both of those. So if there is $1 trillion in infrastructure, how do we get in line for things that match our values and will also successfully engage with the federal government? And part B of the question, when Republicans are in charge, there's frequently talk of devolution of transportation funding. Devolution is actually something that I could probably get excited about if it devolved to the MPOs. If it devolves to the state DOTs, I'm probably less excited. And then is anything along those lines in the wind?
Well, Chris, it's important to call out some proposals that would be quite destructive in terms of transportation and infrastructure funding. The Tiger grants, ironically, are the most popular transportation project the federal government has ever had, program the federal government's ever had. You have heard, even from some of my Republican friends, that budget is dead on arrival. It's not going to be enacted in that form, but it is troubling in terms of the signals that it sends and what we have to work around. I think our key is to be able, first of all, to do everything we can at the local level to do it right. And I'm pleased that the region is looking at stepping up and offering a vision and an opportunity for the community to invest. It was interesting, in November, there were $200 billion worth of investments approved just in the West Coast. From Seattle to Los Angeles, major initiatives that are going to improve the quality of life in those communities and their economies. I think there's an opportunity for us to build on those relationships, to strengthen the alliances, because a lot of what we have done here and that you have helped shape through the planning vision and what's been adopted are programs that are taking off around the country. There's a $2.5 billion proposal for a Brooklyn streetcar that will enable people to go from Queens to Brooklyn and not go into Manhattan. And it's, whoa, people are looking at that with some of the same questions, obviously, here. It's going to be very important, I think, for us to continue doing our job locally and doing it well, and to connect with people around the country that share our values and have similar interest in our programs. But there is an opportunity, I think, for us to recast that federal partnership. It does need to look differently. It breaks my heart when people say, and I have some modest proprietary interest in the Small Starts program that helped us with the East Side streetcar, to have some people around the country say they don't think they can afford to apply for a federal grant because the $40 million they would get would not pay for the extra time and costs that are involved. So I think being alert to ways to recast that federal partnership is something that we ought to be open to. We might find some partnership.
Katie?
Hello. I actually live in East Portland, and so a lot of the things that you mentioned, I'm very interested in. The orphan highways issue is huge, but we don't really want them to come to the city of Portland until they're fixed up. They actually are kind of in the disrepair. The Powell needs another multi-million dollars invested in it before the city of Portland can take it over and maintain it. And so that's something that I, just wanted to make sure that you knew that. And also,
Clarify?
Pardon?
May I clarify?
Yes.
The concept of an orphan highway program would be to provide the resources. So the facility that the city can't afford to take in its current state and put it in a state of good repair, and the state is not in a position to be able to do so for the city, that we have a separate program that is designed to provide the resources to do exactly what you want. That's the notion of an orphan highway program.
And that's fabulous, and I love that idea, and I want to extend my support for that. I think you would get a lot of support for that here. And most of those orphan highways, well, I don't know, maybe it's just that I know of the ones that are out in East Portland. And they're major highways, and we depend on them, and they all need work. The other thing is the Tiger grants. And I was curious, it sounds like the Tiger grants are, you said, are a very popular federal program. Is there, my worry about the Tiger grants is it sounds like you think that they're going to continue into the future. However, right now, there's so much feeling from Washington that that everything is in play, right? And so the problem is that people might not even, it takes a while to apply for a Tiger grant. So are they going to stop applying because they just don't know if it's going to be worth it if the Tiger grants are going to go away? So how much continuity do you anticipate going forward?
Well, that is in fact the battle we have now.
Yeah.
Because we, despite some opposition by some in Congress to cut it back, they continue, and they've been there in the budget every year. That will be the battle now. The proposal of the administration is to zero it out, but that's just a recommendation to Congress. And so we're working to make sure the people who think it's important add their voices, and that Congress, given how many thousands of applications have been received around the country, demonstrating the continued interest and the hundreds of examples of successful projects that have actually substantially leveraged transportation funds and brought things together that have magnified the impact of the federal investment probably 5, 10 to 1. I can't think of what it would be, the Tiger grant down in the South Waterfront, the multiplier there. So that will be the arm wrestling that will take place this summer to make sure that it doesn't disappear from the budget and the decision is made soon enough that people can dive in and do it. But as a practical matter, there have been so many hundreds of applications that have been made around the country that have not yet been approved. I think people can dust some stuff off, change some dates, and resubmit it, and not be too far behind the curve.
I understand we have time for just one last question. I've been signaled, so you guys are going to have to arm wrestle it out over there.
What if I give shorter answers? And do,
Okay, Mike and then Michelle.
Well,
if they're
I'll be
short.
very quick. With no disrespect to Andre, transit isn't everything. We know that green infrastructure is everything. And in fact, you can take great pride and want to recognize that the congressman really started this city off in that direction with the concept of multi-objective management and floodplain management through BES when he had that bureau. So I'll just mention there are 3 things. I will follow up in writing very specific things that fly in the face of everything that's coming out of Washington, D.C. right now.
fastest emails in the West.
Yes, they are.
So there are very, very specific issues that we need to wrestle with regard to green infrastructure. I'll leave it at that for now in deference to the rest of my colleagues and you and your time, but I will follow up.
Sure you will.
Michelle.
And my question is about accessing federal funds in the sanctuary city or sanctuary state tension and how you see that playing out.
It's on everybody's mind. One of the things that I think many of my colleagues are resolute that they are going to support efforts of local communities to provide protection for vulnerable populations. I think the immigration enforcement and what they've done with immigrant visa, I mean, the whole series of things is tragic. I think it's inhumane and immoral. There will be a spirited effort to try and fight at any efforts to penalize communities, particularly with resources that should be flowing for specific projects, programs, entitlements, to try and interfere with them. I think there will be a very spirited effort to fight that legally. And there will be efforts in terms of dealing with legislation, might be less successful. But I am heartened by the response we've seen in our community, not just from outpouring of citizens that are resolute on this, but I can't tell you the number of contacts I've had with people in the business community, education. I think there is a reasonably good chance that we'll be able to defend policies for people that want to protect vulnerable populations. It's a fight worth having, and I am encouraged by all the energy I see behind it. And one of the upsides of a president who has no respect for the judiciary, that it may galvanize. I mean, there's some interesting decisions that have been made a little more forcefully. And so I think there's a dynamic that it may be stiffening the backbone of some of the folks in the judiciary to protect their prerogatives.
Thank you very much, Congressman. We greatly appreciate you taking the time to come and meet with us today to describe all of your goals and your efforts. They're certainly in alignment with the work that we're doing here, and we support all of your efforts. And I suspect that if you come up with more ideas that we can do to help you and reach out to us, we'll figure out a way to do so. And no doubt you're going to get follow-up emails. I see Eli stepping up to jump on to, in addition to what Mike's got from us. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate your courtesy. I know that your time is precious. You've got lots of things, and you are volunteers and have lives outside the commission, although I assume that sometimes it doesn't seem that. I wasn't supposed to say that, Susan said. So your willingness to share some of this time with me is appreciated. And one of the reasons I come home every week is to try and visit with folks. And if you think that there are more elements that we should be exploring, if there are some specific ideas, I'm happy to, if you've got time, to do it either formally or informally going forward, because I deeply respect the work that you're doing and the importance to the people I represent, and candidly, the national models that we want to be protected and enhanced. And your success makes it more likely that we will have success in some of these other areas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Portland Plan Progress Report. This is a briefing. Oh, I was like, and who's doing the briefing? Perfect. How fun. This is very fun, Susan. I think it's the first time I've seen you in that seat since I've been on the commission.
And sustainability. And just like all neophytes coming to the table here, I don't know how to turn on the mic. So today, we're going to have sort of a blast from the past for many of you. And we're going to talk about the Portland Plan and the progress that's happened, the successes that have happened, and the not-so-successful items in the past 4+ years since it was adopted. I'm doing this for all of you, but I also know that this show right here on cable does have very high ratings, so I do want to make sure that this information does get out, and we're doing this presentation in many different venues to let people understand some of what's going on and where places and things that where Portland is doing really well and places where we need to do some improvement. Nick Coble, who is here, did much of the work in terms of pulling together the numbers from many, many different places, so I want to thank him. So many of you were a part of the development of the Portland Plan, nearly everyone here, and its eventual adoption now, almost 5 years ago. For anyone listening in, the Portland Plan was the city's strategic plan. It was our first, I think, real attempt as a community to pull this together. More than 17,000 people were involved in the development and creation of it. At its core, it recognizes clearly that great cities just don't happen by accident. And that's sort of, the premise behind all the work that we do here as an organization. The plan, as you can see there, was designed around 3 integrated strategies related to educated youth, prosperity and affordability, and healthy, connected neighborhoods and a healthy, connected city. Overall, the plan embraces equity and opportunity as sort of the framework or surrounding theme. And council adopted 12 specific measures of success. For those of you who were here as we developed that, you might remember that we had hundreds of indicators at one time, and we got it down to just 12. And that's the 12 that I'm going to focus on today. So much about the Portland plan is that the plan, first and foremost, is about people. It's not about the zoning code. It's not about great design. It's not about a traditional comprehensive plan. All of those things came out of this plan, and all of that came later. But we really focus on how do we make this a great community for the people who live here and who will move here and the businesses that are thriving here. So we've come a long way since the Portland plan was adopted, and I think you will remember our first few conversations around equity and disparities, and we were trying to get used to having those conversations. They were hard and difficult conversations, especially at that time, if you think back. Now, the conversations around equity and race in every city bureau, they're not just normal, they're expected, and they're demanded, and they're seen as a basic way of how we do our work. So many programs and policies and investments, discussions that have happened here over the past 4 or 5 years have really focused on, and you've had much deliberation around how do we look at the impacts on disabled, on people of various racial and ethnic background, on environmental justice, and how do we change what we're doing in terms of programs, policies, and investments to reflect that. And I think all of that came out of the Portland plan. The plan was built on partnerships. It's not just a city plan at all. They are listed up there. Those were our official 20-plus partners. Each of them wrote portions of the plan and agreed to help implement the actual plan. So we went back to all of them, we being Nick mostly, and said, so here's 142 different objectives and action items in this plan. Where are you in this plan, and what's actually been implemented? You'll also know that the Portland plan really laid the foundation for a whole lot of other plans. This was sort of the vision we had when we developed it. We didn't know it would be so successful. I'm very thrilled to say that as each new mayor, Mayor Hales and now Mayor Wheeler, have embraced the Portland plan as the city's strategic document, and it's reflected in our transportation plans, parks plans, climate action plan, economic development, housing, and other issues. And so I think that part of the big vision, not just the actions, have been a success. Some of you, I probably should have had this as a quiz. How many actions were there in the Portland plan? So there were 142 different actions. Here, nearly 5 years later, 90% of those actions are in progress or on track or actually completed. They've been moved on in all 3 areas and in the equity framework. So you can see there's been a lot of action in all the areas. The blue at the top are those actions that have actually been completed. So you can see that most of the things are in the midst of actually happening. This is sort of the report card. I'm going to walk through these 12 measures of success. It shows that about 2/3 of the measures we're doing really well on, and about 1/3 of them we're not really doing so well. And so I will start with the good news first. So I'm going to start with job growth. Jobs are up. Jobs are up in a big way. By 2015, you can see there that we more than met our 2017 goal. We lost a significant number of jobs during the recession, but they kind of came roaring back. And on average, the jobs are paying more now than on average the jobs that we lost. And so in most communities, we would cheer and say that is a wonderful thing. Because of our focus and what we've learned through development of the Portland Plan, we have concerns about that. And we are not as bad off as many cities, but in some ways what we've done is replaced some of the middle wage jobs with higher earning jobs. And that can be a concern for a community that's been sort of a flatline community in terms of having jobs in all different income sectors. So that's something I think that we obviously need to keep track of. And as I'm going through these, if you have questions, feel free to interrupt and we can talk about those things. Other good news, high school graduation rate, it's gone up by 20%, moving from 55% in 2010 to 75% in 2016. Huge stride. That said, we're still only at 75%. We have a goal of 90%. We have a long ways to go. And there are many cities around the country, many states that are doing a whole lot better than we are. Also very important is that not all students are succeeding equally, especially some students of color. You can see that all of the groups have made improvements going from the light blue bar to the dark blue bar. But if you look, for example, at the group of there on the right, Native American students have moved from about a third graduating, only 1/3, to about a half. So huge improvement in just 5 years. But still, basically, they're at 50%, and that is such a big disparity that is obviously an area that we need to continue a lot of work on. This also, any of you have done this kind of work before, when you're trying to tell a story with averages, whenever I hear an average statistic, I'm always like, yeah, and you know that you need to dig deeper to get the actual story. So I think this is a really good example of that. Shifting from jobs and education to the environment, Portland, Multnomah County has reduced carbon emissions by 21%. Our target was 14% by 2017, so we surpassed that. We will have new numbers again for 2015 quite soon. And then a question I get asked a lot is, well, didn't that just happen because a lot of industry left town? And, or didn't that just happen because jobs in general have gone down? But the truth is that at the same time that we've reduced our carbon emissions by 21%, our population has increased by 33% and jobs have increased by 25%. So more people, more jobs, but lower emissions. For contrast, if you were to draw the yellow line there for the entire United States, on average, emissions have gone up by 8% during that same time period. So we're down 21%, and the rest of the country on average is up 8%. In terms of transportation, we're steadily increasing the percentage of people who take transit, walk, bike, carpool, work from home. That's the blue line going up there. So obviously the opposite is the decrease on the gray line there of the percentage of people who are driving alone to get to work. So we're step by step heading in the right direction. Another good sign, our export economy is also growing. We peaked in 2011, but we've made a strong comeback, and we're about 10% above where we were in 2009 when we first developed the numbers for this plan. So obviously exports are important as they bring wealth into the community, so it's different than us just selling coffee and beer and wine to each other. It actually is bringing new money and new dollars into the community. Let me talk about a couple of environmental indicators. Again, these are still generally positive trends. We track something called the Water Quality Index. This merges several different indicators together around watershed health. We are slowly moving towards our goals. These aren't measured every year, so we couldn't do sort of a step-by-step on this one. Tryon Creek is one that's already met the 2035 goal. The numbers at the bottom of the slide there, we're now in 2016, at the end of 2016, at a 32% tree canopy coverage, so that's really impressive. It exceeds our short-term goals and really almost reaches our 2035 goals. So actually, that probably should have been an arrow with a little plus sign on it there. That said, not all areas of the city are created equally, and I'm sure many of you are thinking that as you think about areas of the city that are still quite deficient in trees. So again, an average number doesn't necessarily mean that there's no problem in some places in the city. Another slightly positive measure is around healthy, connected, and complete neighborhoods. Again, these are places where people can walk to the things that they need on a daily basis, so parks, schools, restaurants, libraries, access to transit, and we're moving in the right direction towards our 80% goal for complete neighborhoods by 2035. Next indicator is around healthy people and health. When the Portland Plan was adopted, I know Gary educated us a lot on all of this, and we were like, so what should we be measuring? Should it be diabetes? Should it be asthma? Should it be these other things? And we came to the discussion that weight was probably the single best proxy for health. And a critically important measure then is the healthy weight of our kids. And that has stayed pretty stable at about 75, 76% for children in the 8th grade being at a healthy weight. Our goal, though, is 84%. Having just 3/4 of our kids be at a healthy weight is probably not where we want to be. We want to take some more steps in the right direction. So we haven't gotten worse, as some places around the country have, but we haven't gotten much better either. Next measure is about safety and really our perception of safety. On the right there, you can see the slide. Since 2009, serious crimes have increased from 52 to 59 per 1,000 persons. However, again, just like you shouldn't just look at averages when you do statistics, my daughter has a statistics class right now at U of O, and she's like, Mom, this is not how you're supposed to do it, because you need to take a longer trend line. And so if you go back in time from 1974 to 1996, the rate was more than 100 per 1,000 people, and it was actually around 150 to 160 per 1,000 persons in the mid-90s. So the 7 is important, but the fact that we are at like a third of what it was like especially in the 90s, I think is a significant trend line in terms of serious crime. But still, our goal is obviously to continue keeping that line on a downward trend. On the left side of the slide, you can see that this is, again, it's about perceptions. And our perception of safety has stayed pretty flat. This is from the Otters survey. And in general, it says that 2/3 of the people feel safe walking alone in their neighborhood at night. And what's important about this data is that, one thing that's important about this data is that this is about perception. So this is a question that's being asked where all of the other things that we're measuring in the 12 measures of success, we're counting things. So we're counting trees or jobs, or we're counting income. And in this case, we're doing a survey of perceptions. And so this survey in particular tends to overrepresent older, white, more affluent homeowners. And it's not corrected as much as it could be. So I think if we're going to do survey work, we need to be working on how we do that survey. And so I think that's important. And the auditor's office knows this, and they're working on improving that. It would be interesting from my perspective to see the 1/3 who don't feel safe walking around at night, if those are women and people of color. And so again, once you start doing polling, and we also know if you ask people questions, as proven by our national elections, polls are not always a good indicator of what people are actually going to do. So, Mike, did you have a
Well, no, you
question?
actually brought it up. As I have conversations with folks, when I'm talking to a woman and we talk about how comfortable do you feel walking 4 blocks from your home versus, in front of? It's a very different answer that you get than if
Right.
it's a male.
Right.
So that, I think
And
it's
by
really
age.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. Next slide is also a perception or it's from the survey. And this deals with the overall satisfaction with the city and with neighborhoods in general. In general, people are pretty happy with their neighborhoods. About 85% are satisfied, which is a pretty high score. I believe we don't have, and I would really like to have, if we're going to do surveys, I'd like to do the same survey and a credible survey, with Boston and Minneapolis and us and San Diego and San Francisco, and see if we can compare to how residents actually feel about their neighborhoods in the city. When asked about the city as a whole, however, and including the central city and neighborhoods that they're not familiar with, but the entire city, that's fallen, and fallen in a significant way in the past 5 or 6 years, from around 80% down to 63%. So I think that's an area that is of specific concern. I did this presentation. Interestingly, it's sort of like we arrived this year in terms of having a new mayor who took the Portland plan seriously and had me do this presentation before at the first session of the budget discussions. And we did this as sort of a grounding so that all of the city council members said, oh, these are our real issues that we should be focused on. And so this was one that they were very interested in terms of the perception of the downtown, with the reminder, of course, of that the survey, again, was overrepresenting homeowners, older people, and people who are white. So that said, I think there's something there. One of the things about the satisfaction survey is it does get more interesting and probably more meaningful if you look at the rate that people are actually rating specific services. So as you can see there, people are pretty super happy with fire and parks and their recycling systems. And the light blue line is, let's see, the light blue line, this graph got messed up, looks like. The light blue line is 2010 and the dark blue line is 2015. But in general, you can see that fire parks and recycling are rated pretty high. Water police, streetlights, sewers, kind of in the middle, and people aren't too happy with potholes and street maintenance. They're not too happy with growth in general when asked about that question, and about community engagement and government decision-making. I'm going to get a real version of this slide with the real numbers and send it back out to you, but it does generally make that kind of a, I think it goes down even further at the bottom there. There you go. Next up are some measures related to equity, diversity, and inclusion. The graph at the bottom of the slide shows that the city has gotten more diverse over the past 10 years. Although diversity hasn't increased much in the past 5 years. The bar chart at the top shows income distribution. And it shows generally that the rich are getting a little richer and the poor are getting a little poorer. It shows that the wealthiest 20% are making more than 50% of the money, and the poorest 20% are making about 3%. And these are pretty similar statistics to other cities, our size, and larger cities. It's actually even a larger disparity. When you break this down again and get away from averages into race, you can see significant disparities with Black and Native American households on average making about half of what white households earn. Important in this is, one, is just stunning, and it again shows the importance of taking general average and median income, household income, and breaking them down into other categories. We could also have categories related to women-headed households and other areas. Along that line, we looked at income's only half of the equation, and the cost of living is really the other half. So this graph shows that since 2008, the price of housing and other expenses have caused a decrease in the percentage of households who are self-sufficient. And that means they're able to pay their bills for transportation, housing, food, clothing, and such, from 77% down to 71%. And so that means that there are more people in Multnomah County who are relying on friends and family. They may be living with friends and family. They may be having family doing childcare instead of being able to pay for that, or just not having sufficient enough to eat or a sufficient place to live. So that's been an increase. If I were to ask you why, I think you would all say it's housing. And what we did was we broke out where those things have really shifted in the past 5 years. And this is, again, it's something called the Self-Sufficiency Index. It combines the cost of childcare, taxes, transportation, housing, healthcare, and food. This example here shows households, basically our most, the household that's kind of having the toughest time, which would be a single parent that has an infant and a preschool child. You can see the income is that little blue bar there. It's only gone up 2% from 2008 to 2014, but childcare, taxes, transportation, and housing have gone up much more. We don't have final numbers for 2015-16 yet, but housing will probably, that bar will go up, I think, significantly more. But I think as much as it may go up, it's not going to go up as much as childcare costs has gone up. So we definitely have a childcare crisis as much as a housing crisis. And from my perspective, the reason you don't hear about it as much is that it just doesn't affect as many households. So less than 25% of our households have children 18 and younger. So when you think about how many households actually have just a preschooler and younger, or two of those, it's down in the 1-2% of total households, and those households are mostly led by women. And so there's just the voice, the discussion, having it be an important issue is that it's affecting a smaller number of people. Did you have a question, Katie?
I was just thinking it would be good to see that graph, and in terms of its impact, because housing, 9% rise in housing, if housing is $1,500 a month,
Right.
is going to be a lot more than even if childcare. I mean, that's got to be bad. So it would be interesting to see how the impact on the household.
Sure,
You know,
and we could pull
yeah.
those numbers up for you. I
Yeah.
do know that the child care costs, especially for infant care, it
Really
is the
high.
main reason why women, when they have a second child, can't go back to work. It's not housing costs. So, both of you.
Susan, am I reading this correctly, that over the 6-year period, taxes have gone up 61%?
So that's the question I immediately asked Nick also, and
It
he
doesn't
explained
make
quite.
sense intuitively.
No, it doesn't make sense intuitively at first until you understand it, which is if you were to actually earn enough money to pay for all of these things, what happens is that you actually end up in a higher tax bracket. And there is a real negative. So, when you're at a very low income, your taxes are very low and you actually get all sorts of tax credits. And there's a real sort of disincentive. You get to a certain income to actually pay all your bills and your taxes go up more than proportionally. And so there's sort of this game of and a sad one, that people play of like, okay, I finally made enough money to pay all my bills and now my taxes went up. So that's why that number is so much higher.
State legislation, there's state legislation to address childcare costs, particularly to offer childcare reimbursements or subsidies through employers, because Oregon has one of the worst childcare burdens in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So call your legislator.
It is funny, too, that we don't think, at least not in America, of childcare as being an issue that government should be involved in. But if you go to Europe, there's like the Department of Childcare. You know, this is just like, of course, we have a Department of Housing and Transportation and Childcare because these are things that people need. So it is interesting, and obviously the single mom with 3 kids here does tend to focus on this occasionally. Yeah. Yeah, we can, I don't know if we can do that or not, but I'll look. That'd be great. Again, it's one of those things where if you just look at income and don't look at the expense side of the ledger, it tells a very different story. And you will hear people saying that Portland is doing so well, incomes are up, and you know, and then you start breaking it down and you find out that, yeah, for some people, this place is booming and it's working really well, and for others, it's not. And that's sort of what this is telling us. So that's it. Only 12. It was long enough, but it does give you some indication of how we're doing. We have lots of other indicators that we follow. We do some joint work with Portland State University and following different indicators. I think it's really good for us to be grounded in data sometimes. We all are telling stories all the time about what we think is truth, and so I'm going to try and come back every year and sort of ground us back. We've seen some real major improvements in education, job growth, environmental issues in some areas. We've seen the ability to continue or to grow a little bit in terms of the number of people getting to live in healthy, connected neighborhoods. But we have a serious affordability issue around housing and childcare costs, and continuing that households of color are just not faring as well as others. Yeah. And so I think you all have copies. So if you have questions of any of these things, happy to answer those.
I think I saw some hands up. Is your hand up, Maggie?
Yes.
So Maggie and then Katie and then Eli and Andre.
Thanks. So does, you had black up there, does that include both African and African American?
Right, on the census, African and African American.
Okay. And is it, I'm wondering also if it's possible to look at immigrants and refugees as a separate category.
You rely on census, sure, I'll come up. So I'm Nick Coble for the record.
There you go.
Nick Coble, hello. Okay, this works. Okay, so on the census, it basically, there's only a few products that you can disaggregate income by, and unfortunately, immigrants and refugees are not in that category. But race, for example, and tenure, for example, you can.
I feel like it can be done though, just not off of
Sure,
census data.
sure. I'm not sure. I don't know of any of the data sources that we can use. If you have data sources, I would definitely be interested in exploring that. So let's talk more about that.
Yeah, and then I guess I was a little surprised that, so it sounds like when you looked at feeling of well-being or sense of connectiveness to the city, what was the slide? And you mentioned that it was disproportionately white and homeowners.
So that one.
I can't see that being very representative.
Yeah, no, and
So I'm afraid to actually include that in the.
So I did this, the first time I did this was with the mayor, and we hadn't finished the report yet because I wanted to give him a chance to pick at it. And he's like, throw that slide out. You know, that makes no sense. It's just polling. It was, you know, it was in his first weeks in that job, and he was the one that made the comment to me, like, you know, we know how good national polls are. And so I also know that Mayor Adams, you know, he wanted this to be a happiness indicator. It is important to try to get that feeling of how do people feel about being here? And so I think the best way to do that probably is a survey, but it needs to be a technically credible survey. And the auditor's survey is good, but they know that there are some misgivings there. And so I think that's being worked on in terms of, you know, if you're going to only call people that have a landline, or you're only going to do it through the mail. Who, if you're not going to do it on a text, you're not going to, how you reach people really matters. So.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have some of these, like, we often look towards these negative disparities when we're taking snapshots of the city, but we want to see, like, is there a sense of prosperity, or like what are the lived experiences of people, like, to get at that. But I mean, if you're just looking at white homeowners, I feel it's pretty disingenuous.
Yeah, and it's not just looking at white homeowners at all. All I'm saying is that if you were to look at the actual numbers, it's off by a bit.
Okay.
So it's off by maybe 20%. So not the 80 to 60, 20%, but 20% of the thing. So it's off a few percentage points. It's still, I think, that big. If it was only 2 or 3%, I wouldn't think that there was some truth in it. But this big of a shift, I think there is some truth. And we all know, I think, that some of the happiest places on earth where you would do this study might have really low incomes. A lot of the indicators that we might think of as the things of showing prosperity and a wonderful community, and yet they rate their community really high. And so I think this is still an important indicator.
Thank you.
What it reminds me of is this, like, people hate Congress but they love their own congressperson, so I think that might have something to do with it. We all like our neighborhood, but
You just think that Earl's still listening as well.
Oh, that's right. Anyway, I wanted to ask, I like the measure of success. I think it's really honest. It looks like it's as honest as you're trying to go for an honest thing. I also looked at all the projects in the back, and I thought that was pretty interesting too. And I wanted to ask about number 48, and that is the East Portland Education Center. And it has like one of those big old red goose eggs. That means that nothing has happened. And actually, I knew that, but I didn't realize that it was a project in the Portland plan. And I don't think it's really fair to think that you would know all the details of that, because it's one of a lot of other projects. But I think it was one that East Portland was really interested in. And so I'm wondering what would be the next steps in terms of how does being in the Portland plan help this project? What would you suggest that next steps would be to make sure that it doesn't have a big red goose egg next year?
So one of the things I was amazed at, well, not amazed in terms of, I was yapping to different council members and their staff about what's in here and what's been, and immediately they were all like, yeah, she's talking. And then they're looking through these, and they're looking for those red circles to see if those things are in their bureaus or related to what they're doing. So I saw a real immediate sort of reaction to wanting to, no, we put these things in here. These are serious. We want to actually get them done. That one, I don't remember exactly, but I do know that the school districts were very involved in wanting it to be in the plan.
Yes, but they needed someone, a convener.
Yeah.
They need a convener, and I've seen that project morph a little bit to be more of workforce oriented. And I'm not even an expert on this project, but I doesn't seem to have a convener. And so how does being in the Portland plan allow it to receive a convener?
Right. I think, well, one, it allows it to be of more importance to anyone on council. But just by saying it's there. And so if there is still a community that's interested in pushing this forward and bringing it, through us or through other folks or directly with the neighborhood association or others to council members, being able to say, this was a priority and we continue to see it as a priority. So we can talk offline if you want a little bit
That'd
about
be great.
maybe how we can do that.
Yeah, just wanted to bring it up.
Great.
Eli and then Andre?
Well, I've got, is this done or is it, okay. So this
And
is,
the other thing is, every time it was done,
it's not quite done.
Nick was done, I would go, oh, no, I got another new number. And he'd be like, oh, now we got to rewrite
This
this
is feedback for
section.
next time, I think.
Yeah,
I
is-
found the charts very distracting. in that logically, we're setting a goal, we have actuals, we have baseline 2000, 2010, and then we've got projection of where we want things to go, the Portland plan. And then interspersed in there is like what we actually did in 2015, and it's all in the same trend line. Logically, there should be just a trend line showing where we hoped it to go, and then we start establishing a new trend line of where we actually did, so you can compare about. But having them all lumped into the same trend line on pages 2 and 3, there's 5 different ways of presenting that same information. I found, and if someone can explain how that Pac-Man graph works, I'd be amazed. But I guess I would like to see these things in a consistent format. And you sort of get away with it this year, but in the future, you're going to know the trend. The goal was this. In actuality, it was this or something different. We got to be able to see that. So that's my presentation feedback. And then a couple items just on page 11, the minority, women, emerging small businesses. Just to clarify, it's written in here as though this is showing social equity contracting. It says minority, women-owned emerging small businesses, MWESB. In practice, MWESB is minority, women, or emerging small businesses. It would be very productive, I think, to change the definition to what you just wrote down there, but I don't think that's the way people usually use it.
Good, thanks.
And then the last little simple comment is on page 19. We have, I think there's a supply-demand question between housing and households coming to town. And I think there's probably a great data point out there, but right now it's showing that we added 29,600 new residents in 5 years. Meanwhile, 17,500 new units were built as an argument for saying we're not keeping up. But that's units versus people.
Yep.
People share
No, I
units,
agree.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Right.
it'd be nice to get little
Yep.
apples to apples. So anyway, little
I
tidbits.
like that one.
Thanks.
Good.
I like this. I think it's great that we're reporting on how we're doing. My concern was a little bit in a global sense around some of the bureaus that seem to be, I would have thought they would have been further along, almost complete, and some of the indicators showed work in progress. The one concern that stuck out to me was the brownfields. And that's a big part of our plan. I don't know what we as a commission need to do going forward to build some fire under that, but without the brownfields, the whole prosperity component does start to, we knew that it was going
Yes.
to lag, and so
Yeah.
that part. And it appeared not only what Katie was saying, but the sun system also, which was a big component of the schools coming to us, was lagging. And so that education component seemed to be there. And I don't know, this to me didn't break out by neighborhood. And back when in the day, some people, if you remember, there was the big charts that said complete neighborhoods, and it was by neighborhood. But to disaggregate this and apply it to by neighborhood would be interesting. The sense I got was, even though a lot of things were complete, it didn't seem in some of the transit and transportation areas that of the comments, East Portland was more working and other areas were complete. So, but it would be interesting to see that kind of graphically displayed from complete to in progress or not at all.
Sure. No, that's a great comment. I do know that the discussions around brownfields has been a priority for Mike Jordan, who heads up BES, and Kimberly at PDC, Kimberly Branham and myself. And so the three of us have been meeting a few times trying to say, okay, instead of keep throwing this ball from from group to group, someone needs to catch it and take a leadership role. And, we're meeting again next week to say, okay, no, really. And changes in administrations have affected some of that, but keep the pressure on. I think that's obviously one that needs to keep moving.
Michelle?
So on the brownfield issue, at least one that stood out to me was the lack of identifying a 25-acre site to develop, and just the comment that I've heard from a number of people that they think we're at the end of real estate cycle, so you might get a good deal on property. So it may be a good time to actually focus on that.
Wanted to clarify what I heard from Eli. So you have MWESB currently in there. So can you separate that? Because I think as one, it's a problematic indicator in terms of seeing just emerging small businesses, regardless if they're woman or minority owned, kind of tilts the scale on that indicator. So more of it's an MWB or it's a DBE, emerging small business is its own category.
Right. I think pure procurement does have data on this, whether it's minority owned, women owned, or emerging small business. So I can definitely follow up with that. And
Yeah, I would just, for me, I would prefer to see them separated. I think
another distinction they make is between professional and technical services minority MWESB firms and non-technical services. So that gets at kind of the wage question as well.
Okay.
So that's an important distinction to make.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing too is I'm curious, when you were looking at wage, average income by race, I'm wondering if the numbers for Black households and Native Americans would actually be skewed, because as we saw in the 2015 report from the Housing Bureau, in fact, we're just seeing households Black and Native American households leave the city entirely. So I'm wondering, the households up here, are they representative of the households that have been able to withstand housing price increases? So that's to 2015, but like going forward,
Sure.
I'm
That's
curious
good.
if that could be.
So for some of the goals that we're exceeding, are we going to revise targets upward, or just sort of everything stays where it is and we?
We don't want to do a new Portland plan this week. I don't know how many of you do. We're looking at getting this report out and then having the conversation with council around, okay, so we had these 142 and we've been doing this for 4 years, and when do we update the 142? Do we toss them out? When does that happen? And I think it's in the 2 to 3 years out, and would love your advice around looking at all the things that are on the list for the city to do. Doing another big vision document, I don't think is on the list. Doing a update of the 142 items, perhaps like in 2 years or something like that, kind of makes sense. And looking at, either do you upgrade and increase the goal, and in some areas, maybe you leave the goal right where it is and you just put a ribbon around it and move on to another issue that's pressing.
Mike, actually, okay, go Mike, Eli, and then Andre. I know, that's why I redid my jiggering. And then if we could kind of just try to wrap this up after that, that'd be great, because we're pretty late here.
Well, no, to that point, actually, I was wondering myself whether, for example, in my opinion at any rate, I think the tree canopy goal was a pretty low bar. And you brought up the fact that if you look at the research coming out of PSU and Urban Heat Island effect, it's the distribution of the canopy. And one of the concerns I have is, well, if we're already there, then we don't really need to increase urban forest canopy, which I think from a climate change adaptation and human health perspective, we really need to think carefully about, have we really exceeded the goal? So I wouldn't expect us to go back and go through the whole plan, but I think there should be some discussion about exactly what you described. Should we bump it up, or should we accept that doesn't tell the whole story? So.
And then I think we had Andre and Eli, if you guys, okay, or Eli and Andre.
It's just a question for staff is how, you know how much time it took to generate this update? How much value do you think it provides for decision makers making decisions today? Or how much of it feels like rote homework to talk to every bureau to find out what projects you did to comply?
To me, it's super important. To this mayor, it's very important. He's very data-driven. I think every fifth sentence has the word, I want data. And so I think it's more important than it has been sometimes. I think the more we have this conversation, the easier it gets to collect the information because people get used to doing it. So I'd love to hear your perceptions, but I think there's a lot of value in it. And I'd like to think there's a lot of value in connecting this kind of knowledge and data with decisions around smart cities and technology and decisions around policy decisions that the city's making.
Andre?
Excuse me. You, in asking the question, do you say we've reached goal, put a bow around it, or do something? You had said in your presentation, the averages don't tell the whole story. And so reaching the goal, as Mike indicated, may say, yes, we've reached the goal, but parts of the city may still be deficient.
Right.
So a big concept of the Portland plan is complete. And so, yes, we've reached the goal maybe, but is the city complete in that goal totally? And so maybe it's not all of the city needs emphasis. We just need emphasis in certain parts for certain goals. So I would see it as a refinement. And I would also hopefully, future commissions are able to look at their policies, because housing and other policies will need refinement later on. And they can use this as a basis and as a measurement to say, how do we refine to meet the populations that still aren't getting the benefit? So do we need to do everything for everybody?
Right. And one of the things we were talking about, instead of going back and trying to do a new Portland plan, is what if we did a Portland plan taking this as the base, but for those who are not succeeding, that's the plan. How do we get the benefits that much of the city is beginning to accrue, that we're going in the right direction with, and focus on the disparities and have that be sort of round two of the Portland plan. And I think the mayor is very supportive of that kind of direction.
And so staff doesn't go away with all some of the nitpicks that we picked out. It's pretty impressive work. Just
Great.
appreciate the work you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's excellent. I think it's extremely valuable, and I think you're absolutely right. I think going forward, it's going to be taking it and fine tuning and figuring out the areas we need to now focus on. So thank you very much for all your work. Next item on the agenda is the Central City 2035 Plan Work Session. So hopefully we haven't thrown everybody off by being so far behind schedule, because we need to get through all this today, correct, Sally?
Fun? Yes, hello, everyone. So we're here for our 8th work session, and today we have a few carryover items for you, a cleanup item and a new item. And and since this also indicates we're sort of nearing the end of the list of issues that we've been working through. We did ask you if you had any other issues that were new or anything you wanted to revisit, and I didn't hear from any commissioners on that. So if there is anything, it would be helpful to hear today so that we can come back to you on May 23rd with a final package.
And I just want to say, just to my fellow commissioners, we have a little bit of a complex vote process as it is, and that's kind of why we're trying to understand if there's going to be any amendments being proposed, if we could get those today, or if you're just burning with something you don't quite know what the amendment is yet, maybe just give us a heads up as to what you're thinking about. It's going to be very helpful to kind of parse out how we do the vote. It looks like you might have a question, Maggie.
Yeah, I ran into one of the city commissioners' staff, and they brought up the FAR transfer proposal from SEIU. I know we had someone come to talk to us about it, and then we ran out of time, so I'm curious where that is and if there's been follow-up with them and with, it was Chloe Daly's office about
I
that
believe-
proposal.
I believe the commission discussed this
Okay.
a couple of work sessions ago.
Okay.
So
If I remember correctly, Maggie, you were not in attendance at the
Okay,
meeting it
thanks.
came up. And actually, I'm kind of thinking I may not have been as well, but I think we
it was
we
on
did
the
cover it.
agenda, though, as a discussion item.
And that was after Mr. Knudsen maybe came? Okay,
Joe's going to step in.
thank you.
The Planning and Sustainability Commission actually discussed the item again and voted not to, or, took a consensus not to add that amendment. So that's where it is right now. But I know that the SEIU is advocating to the city council offices to have it reconsidered as part of the next round, too. So at city council, it's very likely, it's going to get discussed again.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to work through the topics here, and then we can come back and talk a little bit more about the May 23rd meeting. So Rachel and just you? Okay.
It's totally blurry, Mike.
Good afternoon. I'm Rachel Hoy with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And I'm going to be talking with you about, in your packet, you have memo I3, which should be the first item after the agenda, and then the first table. So decision table I, and it says revised decision table I miscellaneous code. So there's two items. There's a carryover item, item 32, which I'm going to start with. And then we sent you this revision last week. There's also contained in this package a revision that we're requesting to item I-30, which I'll do next. So this first item, 32, has to do with the affordable housing bonus and how to calculate the bonus FAR. And staff brought this to the PSC at the March 14th session with a proposal to calculate the affordable housing bonus based on earning 1 square foot of bonus FAR for each square foot that was committed to residential development. So during that discussion, PSC expressed some concerns about that proposal and asked if we could come back, if staff could come back with some different approaches, mostly because that connecting it to earning it just based on residential development, Commission suggested that that was quite different from what's been approved today through the inclusionary housing program, which is if you trigger affordable housing, with a building, you receive 3-to-1, and that 3-to-1 is based on the full site area. So we have done a little bit more work on that, and I wanted to just walk through, I have a couple of slides here just to, and what I'm going to be working from is not just the decision table, but we also prepared for you a memo I3 and have basically done a little bit more math to try and figure out some different options. And then we wanted to just have a discussion with you about what you think of these various options. So what we have done is we decided to analyze 3 different calculations. We have option A, which is what is currently approved through the inclusionary housing program. So the existing provision is that you trigger inclusionary housing, you get 3-to-1 FAR based on your site area. Option B is what we presented to the PSC on March 14th, which is that you get a square foot of bonus is earned for each square foot committed to residential. And then we've added option C, which is you earn a square foot of bonus floor area based on each square foot in your building, but that excludes parking. So it would be more than just for residential. So if you're building residential, commercial, you would get a square foot for each use in the building except for parking. And again, that's up to a maximum of 3-to-1 for your site. So,
Can I interrupt for a quick second? So if you could explain how this relates to the modeling that we heard about when we were trying to figure out from the development community and from, I think, the Housing Bureau in terms of the offset in terms of development costs. Was that clear at all?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So when we came up with inclusionary zoning, or when the city came up with inclusionary zoning, the goal of part of the FAR transfer was to compensate a developer for getting the opportunity to include affordable housing in their project.
Right.
So if we're changing the math, how does that relate to making sure we have sufficient offset?
Right. So what we have, that's correct, that is as part of the inclusionary housing program, getting the bonus FAR was part of that offset, was part of the incentive package. So it's still, we're proposing here, it's still part of the incentive package. That hasn't changed, but we decided to look at some different calculations. And I should say from staff's perspective, we went down this path of wanting to look at some different ways to calculate this, mostly because of our concern with how it applied to larger sites. So we have 2 examples here that are in your memo that basically take a look at a very large, like 5-acre site and how these 3 options would be applied, and then a full block development, like a 40,000 square foot site, and how these 3 options would be applied. So we're still taking a look at how the inclusionary housing program approved it as part of the incentive package, which would be option A. And then we're looking at these 2 other options, excuse me, as well. Again, mostly our interest is to see if we can come up with an option that applies this in a way that proportionally awards the bonus FAR by project on a larger site was our main concern. And I guess I can, let me show you as we get into it a little bit more and see if that helps to answer some of your questions.
So Rachel, I think I would just interject that I'm not sure, I mean, I get Michelle's question, and maybe Tyler, you can kind of quickly try to figure out how to address it, because I think what she's saying is there was a financial incentive that was used to offset, and the balancing of the offset of IH, we spent a lot of time debating on. And so just understanding how this may or may not affect that equation.
Tyler Bump, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. There's 2 things, I think, related to your question. One is when we did the financial modeling with the Housing Bureau and the consultant for inclusionary housing, far and away the biggest financial offset was the tax exemption. And so when you remember when we looked through all of the different incentives that we were looking at on the planning side, the FAR bonus, and outside the central city, the parking waivers, or the reduction of the parking requirements, it was the tax exemption in the central city, which was the biggest offset. The other thing, too, is that when we did the modeling for that inclusionary housing, we looked at specific prototypes and how it relates to those prototypes. And that was a predominantly residential building with some ground floor retail. Really what we're talking about here is more of a mixed-use building that has some residential components, some office components, some retail.
So it's a little bit of an apples and oranges thing, but I think when Rachel gets into the options a little bit more, we can see how those relate to what's currently in the code.
Can you remind me whether that property tax abatement for downtown projects applied to the residential portion of the project or the whole thing?
It applies only to the residential portion of the project. So if you're 5-to-1 FAR and above, you get a full 10-year property tax exemption on the residential component of the project.
On all units, on affordable and market rate.
But just to remind, that does not apply outside of Central City.
Okay, so with these three options, we looked at two different scenarios, as I mentioned, and this is in your memo if you want to follow along. I just wanted to, I'm not going to go through all of the math that we did, but I want to summarize some of this, and then I'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have. The first scenario was a larger 5-acre site. Here's some background on that site. Base FAR of 5-to-1, and basically base plus bonus FAR. There's a lot of FAR that's available, 1.8 million square feet plus. The second scenario is a full block, 40,000 square foot site. We did a same base FAR 5-to-1, and you add a bonus to that, you have a 320,000 square feet that's available to you. So staff, and again, I mentioned that our main interest in wanting to look at some different options is that we really wanted to see how this would play out really on the larger site. Some of our concerns were on with option A, which is that a project comes in and triggers the inclusionary housing program. That could be one building on this larger site that the project gets the full 3-to-1. And there could be a minimum amount of residential development and affordable units. And it's disproportionate to the amount of FAR that could be provided then for that first project in the door. Our other concern was that the way that the inclusionary housing code is set up, each project that comes in, if they each earn that 3-to-1, we could flood the market with FAR and see less use of other bonuses and transfers. So those were really staff's main goals in trying to figure out what some other options are and how we could calculate the FAR or the bonus FAR. So some of the points that I just want to make related to, and I don't have a slide on this particular point, but I guess if you're looking at, if you'd like to look at something in the memo, the two tables we produced, which are mostly the math that take you through the various options. Option A provides all the FAR up front, like we've talked about. And staff has some concerns with this approach, as I've just noted. Option B provides FAR incrementally by building, but it's based on earning the FAR for residential development only. So on the full block development, this is a little problematic for that option B, for the mixed use development, in terms of if they're earning their FAR only on the residential development, but they had a plan for a bigger building with also commercial development, they would have to go to another bonus or transfer option to get access to more FAR to complete the project. Option C is the option that's probably closest to what is currently approved by the inclusionary housing program. This option in providing 1 square foot for every square foot that's built, excluding parking, but every use in the building would end up in a situation very similar to option A, where there'd be plenty of FAR to complete the project, and in fact there would be unutilized some bonus FAR remaining that the project would be able to transfer if they'd like to in the future. So the staff recommendation is that different from what we presented to you at the last session, but we would like to propose that the calculation be done based on option C, where with each square foot of floor area, you would earn 1 square foot of bonus. So this is based on each use in the building, excluding parking. For each square foot, you would earn a bonus square foot. Now, these are just a couple points here I have on this slide of why staff is proposing this. One, again, on larger sites, we like this approach because it allocates the bonus proportional to a project. It's not all at once. And again, it's in relationship to that. It would be building by building. And we think that, for example, on a larger site, this could encourage more residential to be built on larger sites. If each project, if you trigger the inclusionary housing program, you're going to have access to this bonus, and it would be provided incrementally with each project. This calculation could also reduce the complexity of having to deal with, if the option we presented to you last time, option B, if it was just based on residential, if you had other uses in the building, this option could be taking away some of the complexity of accessing bonus FAR, since you would get a bonus square foot for each use in the building. And we think that this may, because it's on an incremental basis, could also be easier tracking as it's distributed by project rather than by site. So I wanted to leave it there and just open it up for questions and discussion.
Are there any questions? Eli?
If I'm tracking it right, I like the staff's recommendation on this. And I'm thinking that this would likely come up maybe even more often outside the central city where there's larger sites. That if we call this the large site loophole in the FAR bonus, that there are a lot more 5+ acre sites outside the central city, and someone could just build a 20-unit housing development, if I'm getting this right, on Reed College's campus, or I don't know where it would be, but somewhere where they've got, I guess they would need to have some mixed-use zoning to do it, and that would just, they get 3-to-1 FAR over the whole property area. Is that, if I'm getting that right, that might be something that we would want to suggest as input as it applies elsewhere in the city.
So I know that outside the central city, this is also being looked at. We're trying to be consistent with our approach, but that's certainly something that I can check on. But I'll talk with our Task 5 mixed use folks to see where they are in that process. Andre?
So the option B, there would force people to go to potentially other transfers or FAR bonuses. How much, do you have a sense of how much that would force them? And potentially, conversely, how much will it hurt the historic districts in not forcing people to go to those districts?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, again, we're talking about the affordable housing bonus and how we want to calculate the affordable housing bonus. For projects that don't trigger the affordable housing bonus, they will have the option of going to the historic resource transfer. That's really a priority that staff has put forward. So I think what we're talking here is about projects that are being designed to have a mix of uses. I think the example that we provided here, while I don't know that it's one that you see quite often today, I think we heard from the commission last time that we may see more in the future where you have a smaller amount of residential, but it may have a higher mix of commercial and retail. We are seeing some of that now, but I think what we're trying to do here is trying to figure out the best approach to also meet the intent of the incentive package provided through IH, but also distribute the affordable housing bonus incrementally based on a project-by-project basis, or I should say building-by-building basis.
So would the accumulation of the bonus be at the end of the project, would they have the excess, or by building by building?
Well, if it's calculated based on option C, if a project comes in and they are going to trigger the affordable housing bonus, then staff at BDS will work with them to figure out, here's your building, here's your mix of uses, you have this much bonus available to you, and you know, the project that's coming in, they've already done all those calculations to figure out how big they want their building to be and what they're going to use. So if they have anything left over, that'll be determined at the time that they come in with the project. And that excess FAR, if there is any, could be transferred at some point in the future.
I think to answer your question, either option B or C is calculated by building at the time you go in for a entitlement approval.
So is that transfer, is it a housing transfer, or is it for any?
For any,
FAR?
well, we're proposing that it could be used for anything. Both with B and C, we're suggesting that that bonus FAR is not tied to a specific use.
I think, just for clarity's sake, and then go ahead, Gary, after that. I'd just like to add that, and we've talked with staff about this, and I didn't necessarily advise adjusting how these tables would work, but this isn't the way we do it in practice. We don't have a client come to us necessarily and say, I kind of want a building of X size, figure out my FAR. Really what it is, they come to us and they say, my site is here, tell me the biggest building I can build here. And we work back through the code to determine that zoning envelope. So I guess where I'm getting at is the fact that this implies that there's hundreds of thousands of FAR sitting unutilized is very unlikely, because we're not going to work the problem from use to FAR unutilized. We're going to go, what's the most amount of FAR we can do within the zoning envelope and work back, if that makes any sense. And then go ahead, Gary.
Rachel, I'm still not fully understanding the staff preference for option C over option B, and it seems that they produce relatively similar results quantitatively. So I'm kind of, what's the break point for you guys on this?
I think option C is more closely connected to what was approved through IZ, which was that project would have access to the full 3-to-1 at the time of triggering IH. So, and our main goal here really was to figure out a way for larger sites to allocate the bonus proportionally to a development. Both B and C do that. But C...
For both B and C.
Both B and C would offer that incremental ability to allocate the bonus FAR by building. The big difference between them is staff felt that this one is more closely, a little bit closer to what was approved through IH. And so we're not making as big of a change to what had been discussed and approved through the inclusionary housing program.
So my understanding that you feel that option C better supports the inclusionary housing goal than option B does?
I think that it...
Even though it's calculated on total building?
I think for us, it's more of a calculation. My second bullet point here is it could, I think one thing it could do is allocating it incrementally on a larger site could certainly encourage more residential development on larger sites because it's done building by building, and it'll all be based on if you trigger inclusionary housing or not. So if you have a larger site that has a building that doesn't trigger inclusionary housing at all, they're going to be looking for other ways to build that commercial building. It could be taking FAR from other parts of the site. It could be using the historic resource transfer. So I think it'll all depend, building by building, what the project has in mind.
Okay. And my second question is, when you develop these, to what extent did you have empiric data, experience locally or experience of other communities in crafting the approach? I mean, is this, I'm trying to get a sense of, is this people's best judgment about how it might and should play out, or is there some experiential background that says we've seen this work in other places,
Well, I think
or
we're,
we've seen it work locally?
yeah, I think we're in new territory with a new inclusionary housing program. And so we are trying to figure out the best way within the boundaries of that new program to allocate bonus FAR, which is part of the incentive package. So option A is the way it was approved. Staff raised concerns about that, really just for fear that if the first building in that triggers the inclusionary housing program, if that's the only residential development that's built on a larger site, and they just received all of the FAR, 3-to-1 based on the whole site, we think that that's disproportionate to probably the public benefit and the minimal amount of affordable housing that's built. Option B and C, we feel, because it's proportional to the building, there's probably just we feel it's a better approach, and we'll be able to track that then future distribution of FAR with each new project that comes in.
Okay. And last question, if we find out that this isn't working, or how will we know that it's working or not working, and then what would be the steps to revise the approach if it's not working adequately?
Well, I think we would need to, BPS will be working with housing to evaluate the whole project. I mean, this is one small piece of the incentive package, and we have other bonuses, and we have the ability to track the usage of those bonuses and then how this will be allocated by project. So I think that we could take a look at it in a couple of years. I know the inclusionary housing program is looking at the affordable housing bonus fund will be evaluated every 3 years, I think, as part of that process. So it may be a time when we would also take a look at how this, the bonus FAR is being utilized and how it's being allocated.
So fine tuning, it would come back to PSC as a legislative activity and then to council for potential code change, or?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds like a good thing, a good way to approach it.
The FAR incentive
Thank
piece
you.
would have to, would it not? 'Cause
Oh,
it's in
for
the code.
sure. Yes, exactly. Because it's in the code, any change that we would make definitely would come back through the PSC. Yes.
Are there any additional questions on this or a motion?
I've got a couple of questions. I'll try to brief. So this is more likely, the concern about large site is more likely to come into play not in a large mixed-use building, but in a master plan, right? That's where we started with this
Right.
concept, a Conway site, Lincoln High School redevelopment kind of thing. So first, is the proposal still to define site as the entire master plan site? We talked about that last time.
Right.
I haven't
That's
seen
right.
code language. Have you generated code language yet? Or is that still to
So
come?
the code language will come back to you in the full
Okay.
package on May 23rd. I will point out that defining the master plan boundary as the site area, we realize that it will not be in the Central City code. It'll be part of, it has to be in 33-245, which is the inclusionary housing code. And that's going to be done as part of the the Task 5 cleanup project. So that you will see that, but it'll be done as part of that cleanup.
Don't we have a Central City Master Plan section as part of
We
our
have a
Central
central,
City Plan?
yes, we have a Central City Master Plan. It's just and this is something that I can get confirmation on with our code staff, but it was their recommendation that we make that update to the inclusionary housing code as opposed to putting it in, because we're talking about how we are defining site and how we are defining the, it's the definition of the master plan boundary as a site for the purposes of utilizing the on-site provisions, if you recall, and those are discussed within 33-245.
But, so I think we got two issues, if I'm hearing it correctly. There's one is, what's the definition of site, which is in the zoning code?
That is in the zoning code, correct.
And then there's the definition of when you're doing a master plan, how you're treating this provision on that definition of site. Correct?
Troy Doss.
Thank you, Troy.
Troy Doss, Senior Planner, Central City Team. There are only 5 master plan sites. There are a lot of very large sites still in Central City that are defined by ownership, regardless of how we deal this with master plan provisions or not. So let's say someone comes in and redevelops the Lloyd District, or like the Lloyd Center Mall, or redevelops any number of, dozen other brewery blocks, and they do one project that has affordable housing in it, that triggers the affordable housing. They would get a bonus for the entire site area based on this proposal, and that's what we're trying to scale back. So it is applicable to these large sites that are triggered to be master plan sites, but there are a number of other large development opportunity sites. Everything in South Waterfront, everything in the Lloyd District, a number of sites in the Central East Side, a number of sites downtown. So we're very concerned about that aspect of it. So I wouldn't just limit it to what's being defined as site by a master plan.
So that's fine. I mean, I'm comfortable with what's being proposed now. I'm absolutely comfortable with what we're trying to protect against this sort of flooding the market with FAR. This is a little bit of a tangential point, but I thought it would be beneficial in whatever master planning zoning context we're talking about. If someone has a large site, whether it's a formally designated master plan site or whether it's just a single owner, that they be given some ability, some flexibility in addressing inclusionary housing, so that if they're developing 5 or 10 acres and they're going to build 5 or 6 or 8 buildings, that we give that owner some flexibility to allocate, to meet the affordable housing requirement with some flexibility between buildings.
And I believe that was voted on in a
Yes.
previous meeting, and we all agreed that
But that was, so my question, but now I'm hearing that's not going to be part of our Central City. It's going to be part of a separate master plan, large site review. Which, is that-
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse the topic. It won't be part of another, it just is, it's the location in the code that needs to be edited, I guess, is it's not in the Central City Plan District where we need to make that edit to the code. It's actually in the inclusionary housing section of the code, which is 33-245. So it doesn't have anything to do with other large sites.
But, so let me just then restate, but the intent is to have that section of the code edited as we're going through and approving the Central City 20 codes, or Central City section.
Let me get confirmation on that for you.
Or concurrent with that.
Fair enough.
That's the better way to probably say it.
That better way of saying it. Thank
I
you.
will double check that. I think that it's a project that is ongoing right now to do cleanup work to our comp plan task 5. So it's all going to go into effect at the same time. So concurrent is probably a good way to say that. But I will bring that confirmation back to you on the 23rd.
Hypothetically, I build a building, I get my FAR bonus. I want to use it on building 2. I have a large site. Do I get that bonus only when I build the second building, or can I have a game plan? When under what's now on the table, when do I get my 3-to-1 bonus? I'm not going to build it my first building's going to have 100 units. I owe 20 units of affordable housing, and I tell you, I want to build it in building 2 or 3. Can I do that? Do I get my FAR when I complete building 1 if I have some kind of a dedicated, obligation to build it in building 2, or do I not get it until I actually build those 20 units of affordable housing that I
So
owe?
it's my understanding through provisions, if you go with option C, when you get the building, you get the FAR bonus.
Yeah.
So yes, you get it at that time, and then you can move it to your other building.
Even if I haven't yet provided the 20 units of affordable housing, I want to do my affordable housing. in
Well, then you're
building
not getting your bonus. You're not getting your bonus on that then. On that particular project, you have to build the building that has inclusionary housing included in it to get the bonus. If you're
So-
building an office
so
building.
Isn't that going to force every building then has to have affordable housing? I can't
No.
aggregate
No,
my
here's
affordable
why,
housing into
here's,
one
here's
building.
why we wanted to do this, especially for these larger especially for the master plan sites and defining it the way that you're discussing. If, let's say you're a 10-acre site, and you have 5-to-1 FAR, you have 5 times 10. You have a lot of FAR that's just sitting there right now. And if you're doing a commercial project and you want to build, you can pool your FAR into that building, basically, is how those large sites work today and going forward. If you wanted to earn more, you could either transfer some to historic resources, or you could pay into an affordable housing program. It's hard to imagine why you would, because you're sitting on so much. If you do a residential project, it triggers the requirement anyway, and it comes with the automatic bonus anyway. So it really is a bit of a wash in that regard. What we're trying to be mindful of is, yeah, we want that first couple projects, if they happen to be non-residential, to be able to start. At some point, they're going to need to get some more anyway, so they're probably going to do it through doing residential or paying into the funds. But it shouldn't have any impact on getting a project going or several projects going.
Adam, do you get FAR for what's future, what will become a right-of-way? Another time,
Not-
but just,
Not on your.
it has to do with how you
larger
designate, in subdivisions, how much area you get.
Yeah, that's
You
a
don't get your right-of-way.
citywide issue that's being discussed.
Okay, so, table for now.
So in the interest of time, are there any kind of more particular questions on what's being put on the table, which is staff recommendation for option C? And if not, is anybody feeling good enough to offer up a motion?
I move that we approve option C.
Okay, thank you for the motion. So moved. Is there any other additional discussion on that? Doesn't appear to be. So with that, Julie?
Yes.
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 Larcell. Yes. Oxman. Yes. Rudd.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Spivak.
Yes.
St. Martin. Yes.
Thank you.
Schultz.
Yes. So that passed. Thank you.
Great, so the next item that we have here is on the flip side of decision table I. And this is the revision item that we mentioned. So staff is requesting a revision to the bonus and transfer, this is item I-30, sorry. We're requesting a revision to the bonus and transfer provisions section specific to South Waterfront. Staff is proposing that we return back to the draft plan some exception language that was in the proposed draft that we inadvertently removed. Staff had not intended to change the existing priorities for South Waterfront, but the last code that we presented to you, we did change the priorities. So this is just for projects that don't trigger inclusionary housing. So if a project triggers inclusionary housing, they are part of that track. They will get the bonus FAR for inclusionary housing. If a project does not build to trigger inclusionary housing, we had not intended to set up priorities for what South Waterfront could use. So in South Waterfront, they've got their open space bonus, greenway bonus, and they've got their transfer within a sub-district. So this exception that we're asking that we add back in, that was part of the proposed draft, just states that South Waterfront does not have any priorities if they don't trigger affordable housing, and they can go to any of those, that transfer or those bonuses when they would like. There's no priority connected to them.
Any questions for Rachel? Andre?
Why would you take away the priorities? Or why are you recommending to take away the priorities?
Well, it's the way that we had it in the proposed draft. We were trying to change, make as few changes to South Waterfront as possible, mostly because of the complexity of how that area has been developed. From 2003 with the South Waterfront Plan, that area has been, they had their own transfer within a sub-district at that time that plan was developed. And just it is wrapped up, the way they transfer FAR is wrapped up in development agreements that are fairly complicated. So we have had not intended to change that for that sub-district.
We made a mistake. It's just, oops, was really the clearest way to say this. Well, we've already, this whole transfer within a sub-district conversation, that language is always confusing when we talk about it because it's a new concept. It's just something that's always been done in South Waterfront since we adopted it in 2003. And the part of that was we were really trying to incent, we have very large sites that have a lot of institutional development for one thing as well. We were trying to allow them to move FAR from multiple sites to allow them to get their mission accomplished. A lot of that was also creating additional greenway and additional open space in the district, which was all beneficial. So when we were trying to rework the FAR bonuses and transfers for the entire central city, when we got to South Waterfront, it was complex because it was complex. And in trying to fold it into the new code format that is kind of a result of IH, this is just a step that we missed. It's just as simple as that. There was nothing about changing intent here. We just made a mistake.
Eli?
I'm looking at this, I'm not perhaps tracking completely. It seems like it's not saying the waterfront priorities don't apply. It's saying that South Waterfront, there is a specific priority, which is at first you have to use the greenway bonus, and then you can do, so am I getting that right?
Yeah, if you are, and that's the way it always has been, and that's if you have property right on the greenway, that would be the first thing that you go to. Otherwise, that within that sub-district, they've often used their transfer within a sub-district to, in many cases, taking FAR off of the greenway to expand the greenway.
Okay.
Mike? Oh, sorry, were you
Well, I guess I have a kind of question for Kat. The attention to alternatives to the affordable housing bonus, does anyone anticipate that we're going to see a lot of 19-unit mixed-use buildings with 19 residential units to game that? We're providing lots of ways. This is beyond just this one little issue area, but there are lots of ways to get bonus without doing affordable housing. I'm just wondering if there's enough of them out there that we might see.
It would be an extremely expensive way to game it.
Okay.
Let's just put it that way. It's really hard to do a mixed-use project as it is. It adds a lot of expense. And one example is you typically have multiple lobbies, one for residential, one for, it just starts getting really complex and really expensive. So maybe possibly in some bizarre, unique situation, it's going to be pretty rare.
Having participated for, I don't know how many years in the process that resulted in those agreements at South Waterfront, the use of the Greenway bonus was part and parcel to the entire concept of developing South Waterfront. So I definitely support this.
Any other questions, comments? If not, can I have a motion?
I'll move to support this change.
So moved. Any further discussion? Jeff?
I was waiting for the vote.
Oh, wow. How exciting. Okay, Julie, let's call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
Howe.
Yep.
Larcell.
Yes.
Oxman. Yes. Rudd.
Yes.
Smith. Yes. Spivak. Yes. St. Martin. Yes.
Yes. That passes. Next item?
No, it's 12.
Oh, yes, okay. Sorry. A lot here. So this is we wanted to run this past you. This goes back to the large master plan sites.
Give them your two.
I-40, correct?
There you go, I-40. So when we identified, this is probably more specific to Lincoln High School site than anywhere. But one of the reasons that we identified that as a master plan site wasn't because we were really concerned about having to do a master plan for the Lincoln High School site, because it's a single project, and when they come in for design review, they're doing that anyway. It was more, what if they don't do Lincoln High School there, and it gets moved to a different place, and now we have this 12-acre site that is a very substantial site at a transit area in the heart of our city. We want to make sure that gets master planned. So this tweak here would basically say, if it's anything other than a school for kindergarten through 12, it needs to go through master plan. But if it's a school, it doesn't have to go through that process, because it's basically going through that process anyway through the design review that it's required to do. Does that make sense? So that's the proposal.
Oh, any further questions?
Quick question.
Jeff and then Andre?
What happens if it's going to be a school, but they add some commercial, bit of retail? Is that gonna
The part
push-
that's not a school would be subject to the master plan requirements. So let's say they condensed everything onto a single building pad and did a high-rise school, which is very possible, but did not do any of the other accessory stuff they already have on the site, the open space, the tracks, all that, and sold that for commercial or mixed-use development. That part would be subject to master plan. The school itself, though, would not.
Is there a size that would trigger it having to be master plan? In other words, they just create a small retail pad.
I mean,
That retail pad has to do a master plan?
Well, no, it's 40,000 square feet. If anything under 40,000 square feet is exempt from
All right,
master
okay.
plan requirements, yeah.
I thought we upped that to 100 and...
No, that was if you voluntarily want to do a master plan, we increased it. But for small sites, we've kept that exemption at 40.
This is a small site that may be within the larger boundary. That's the exemption.
Andre?
So, going back a few years, when the schools were talking about changing uses within the school, there was quite a bit of testimony around citizens wanted to be involved in that, even though it was still going to be a grade school. The changing of the kids who were coming there, and there was a whole issue around conditional use at that time. So, as I understand it, Lincoln could change in terms of how it's viewed as a school, long as it's quote-unquote a school, and not have to go through the master plan. And my concern would be, how do the citizens, through that process, I know it's going through design review, but how do they voice their concerns about the use of the school as a different school, whatever that different school might be, other than a master plan process?
Well, use is not something that's, other than providing an exemption for a school, the master plan process in itself does not look at the individual uses that are on there and try to parse what's appropriate and what's not. It's going to have a CX mixed use zone, so pretty much anything goes on that site. And to be honest, regardless of whether it's what type of school it is, it's still going to go through a very public design review process, and all a master plan is a very large site version of the same thing. So I don't think there's any difference in that regard. In terms of how does the public influence PPS's decision as to what type of school it is, it's a very public process. They're engaged right now with the community at large and in the Goose Hollow area, and they're about that process right now, and it's a discussion that also happens at the school board level. So they're going through a pretty rigorous review process right now about what the elements of that program at Lincoln's going to be.
Just my recollection of that process when we were hearing about it was that the PPS board was not responsive. That's why they were sitting in the chair you were at. So
I'd say
that
times have
was-
changed in
was-
that regard.
And it seems that we're pushing that to the design commission who, you know, again, I just am concerned that, I know it's not probably our true purview to determine who the school makeup, but it gave a voice to citizens that were concerned about their schools, and we were able to influence that decision before. And I'm concerned that we seem to be pushing that away.
This response isn't going to make you feel any better, but I'm going to lay it out there because it's honest. Well, because it's honest. What I'm going to tell you is that whether we have or not have this exemption, the Design Commission has absolutely no purview over how PPS uses that site. How they design it and lay it out, they do, and that's what this is basically getting at.
Well, and just to be clear, even if we left the master plan provision in the code for them, they wouldn't be coming to us. They'd be going to design commission either way. So I think that it all remains the same. We're really short on time, guys. It's already 3:00. So unless you just are dying to get something particular about this item out on the table, I'd love to kind of speed it along and hopefully get a motion.
If Lincoln builds 3 stories with 10 stories of office or housing on top, what process for the building?
They would be going through a master plan for something like that, but it's highly unlikely.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Anybody?
I move we adopt.
So moved. Is there any discussion? No? Julie?
Aye.
No.
House.
Yes.
Larcell.
Yes.
Oxman.
Yes.
Rudd.
Yes.
Smith. Yes. Spivak.
Yes.
St. Martin. Yes. Schultz.
Yes. Motion passes.
Good afternoon,
Well,
Nicholas.
I'm sorry, Nicholas. Let me just interrupt real quick. So we are at 3:00. I guess I need to just ask my fellow commissioners if they're willing to hang in here and try to perhaps speed along, yet have good discussion still, moving through these last few items so we can wrap up. Yes? Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Nicholas.
No problem. This can be hopefully pretty quick. It's not an item marked for discussion, but it's carryover item P2 on table P. This is a proposed new policy crafted in response to testimony you heard to the proposed draft that supports measures to increase connectivity between neighborhoods across public transportation infrastructure. This was discussed at your meeting or your work session on February 14th, but the decision was deferred to the 28th to discuss in the context of your discussion on the I-5 Broadway-Weidler interchange. However, this policy wasn't ever actually revisited technically by the commission, so we just wanted to dot our i's and cross our t's and bring it back to get a decision on approving this policy.
Anybody want to just go ahead and make a motion to move forward with this?
Second.
So moved. Additional discussion? No? Julie?
Aye.
Yes.
House.
Yes.
Larcell. Yes. Oxman. Yes. Rudd.
Yes.
Smith. Yes. Spivak.
Yes.
St. Martin. Yes. And I like other indications. Whatever those may be.
Yes. Motion passes.
Okay. The next item is related to the Willamette River, and unfortunately, Mindy Brooks is on jury duty, and Debbie Bischoff is in a beach somewhere, so, I'm working on it. So here we have a picture of lots of people swimming in the Willamette River in the central city. And so this item is about developing a standard for temporary floating structures in the Willamette River. But before I get to that, I just wanted to remind you that we heard a lot of testimony about swimming in the river during our public hearing process last summer. And so Debbie Bischoff brought this action to you in November to expand opportunities for swimming. At that meeting, she also told you about a swimming study that we just completed, that we worked on with the Parks Bureau. And the study ranked safe, family-friendly swimming places around the central city based on site and safety criteria such as river characteristics, visibility, sun exposure, beach materials, and et cetera. So it looked at Hawthorne Bowl, and that scored the highest. Poetry at the Beach, which I'll talk about in just a minute. The Zidell property down in South Waterfront. The East Bank Crescent, which I will also talk about in just a minute. And then McCormick Pier, which was determined to not be suitable due to access issues. The other thing we've been working on is an East Bank Crescent riverfront plan that we developed it with a number of stakeholders. And the goal, kind of following on questions that Mike Houck asked us throughout this time, was how to find a way to address fish and wildlife habitat, boating, swimming, educational opportunities, enhanced greenway trail, kind of all in the same area. So this document is now out on our website, and these are the two concepts that are intended to be integrated as opportunities allow. But there's a habitat focus and public access focus. And just in case you aren't familiar with this, this is between the Hawthorne Bridge and the Markham Bridge on the east side, kind of by OMSI. So both the swimming study and the East Bank Crescent Riverfront Plan will come to the City Council on May 31st for them to accept it. So another swimming-related item, you may have heard the mayor's State of the City address. He told Portlanders that he wanted to take the Mayor Katz's River Renaissance to a whole new level. He wanted to do a pilot beach at the Poetry at the Beach site, which we're working on. He wants to take the project forward that I just talked about for the Central East Side Riverfront Plan. He just was calling the river the city's largest unofficial park. So now back to so there's been a lot of interest in swimming. So back to the swimming platform. So staff consider a variety of ways to make it easier to permit temporary floating structures in a way that's sensitive to the environment. We considered a review. We considered an exemption and decided we finally landed on a standard as the way that we thought was most appropriate. So the standard that you have in your packet includes the following sort of conditions: that these platforms would only be allowed in the river between July 1st and October 31st, which is the window where in-water work can happen, so it avoids the peak salmon migration. It would only be allowed in the open space zone. In just a minute, I'll show you that map. That there would be 4 allowed in the Central Reach total at any one time, and that coincides with the 4 swimming beach sites that we just identified in the swimming study. That these platforms be no wider than 12 feet wide, and that's the distance so that light can penetrate underneath, and so the predator fish don't hide. We thought that it could be up to 100 feet, which would allow for different kinds of kayaks, and not just swimming, but boaters could use it as well. That it be free floating, or in other words, a platform that you'd have to swim to or come off an existing dock. That it be at least 50 feet away from ordinary low water mark, and again, trying to stay away from salmon rearing habitat. That it have no roof or walls, so that no one thinks that it might be a place to live. And that the hours of operation are from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is basically dawn to dusk in the summertime. So here is the open space areas in the city. It's roughly from the Broadway Bridge down to the Markham Bridge, or it actually is in that area. So this is the area. These could be anchored off-site here. While the city is proposing a standard for floating structures, because we think it addresses the impacts that we've identified, an applicant would still have to obtain the necessary state and federal permits and a lease from the Department of State Lands. And so one might ask, why bother with a standard if the state and federal agencies have to review it anyway? And we considered that, but when there are there were few impacts on natural resources, we felt like this was a streamlined way to go about this. Someone might also ask, why not just exempt it? And we considered that too. In fact, that was what originally was in your packet. But after some discussion, we decided that it would be better to set forth the parameters that the city believes are important, rather than just leave that to the state and federal process. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion. Yeah.
Well, comments, as I shared my concerns both with staff and with my colleagues on the commission. I was very concerned about it being an exemption. I think going the standard route is a much better way to go. I would say that I think the federal and state agencies will probably be more rigorous and take longer than the city. So I didn't see it as an impediment, but I think it's a good direction to go. Staff address virtually all the concerns that I raised. One of which is, and this is going to be an enforcement issue, I believe, because I believe these will be taken over by transient folks on the river. We've seen an unbelievable increase in boats on the river where people are living literally year-round. And I really like the fact that we're talking about, and I think it's a great idea, frankly. One of the big issues, one of the big conundrums is how do you, the shallow water habitat, which is where there's a lot of discussion about the beaches, is prime salmonid habitat. So addressing the in-water time period and so forth, and the other responses I think were great, and I'm happy to support this.
Great. Chris?
So what are the assumptions about who the applicants will be in terms of being public or private entities?
Yeah.
Most likely they would be public entities, the Parks Bureau, and they are supportive of this. If you look at the map, it's mostly public land in this area along the open space. I suppose OMSI is in that area, and perhaps they could apply, but I would think that most likely it would be Parks Bureau.
And what would stop somebody from putting in an application and setting up a platform and charging people $5 a day to use it?
Good question.
And I guess the question I'm getting to is, do we want to specifically make a requirement that it be a public entity?
Well, it would have to be since it's park land, it would have to be the Parks Bureau as the applicant.
So you have to be an adjacent landowner to apply?
For the Division of State Lands, there's a priority in terms of your ability to lease the surface. The priority is to the adjacent landowner, so they have the first shot at it. I think part of what's going to drive this is the market, because I expect if you try to charge people, they would do what they're already doing, which is using that dock that's by the boathouse. So they'd use the free one.
Because of the priority, the private owner could build it, and could you put a retail space on this? So could someone sell hot dogs? I'm just, because.
Looking for another opportunity.
No, I'm serious, because it goes, what Michelle said, it goes by priority on the surface. you could have a private owner, and someone could come up and say, I'll pay you X amount if I can put a float out. I'll tie up boats, I'll put a hot dog stand, and there's no roof or anything.
The opportunity here is coffee in the winter when it's cold out there.
Well,
That's where you
Except that the dock's not allowed then.
Is it possible to have a retail stand on a float?
As long as it doesn't have a roof
Yeah, well, that's easy.
or walls.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, basically, you got a cart on the water.
Well, we'll look into that for you, for sure, because you did recently approve small retail in the
Yes.
open space zone. So I will look into that. I don't have the answer to your question.
So
right
the
now.
market opportunity is to outfit food carts with pontoons, right?
Gary, you had a question? Gary, go ahead.
I know we're looking primarily at the authorizing legislation to create, to allow these things to exist, but at what point in the process do human safety issues come in? It seems to me that a dock which is anchored at least 50 feet away from the shore creates a uniquely attractive and dangerous situation for kids. And at what point does that get considered? Who's responsible? Where does that fit into the whole process?
Well, I will tell you that just yesterday, the Parks Bureau, I joined the Parks Bureau for a meeting with a lifeguard company, because we're talking about creating a pop-up beach at the Poetry at the Beach, and we're talking about actually hiring lifeguards and having swim buoy lines in order to try to make it as safe as possible, that they would do swim safety instruction. And so Parks is very much concerned about this, and they're going to take the steps that are necessary to make it as safe as they can.
Okay. Thank you. And having said that, I'm very supportive of the idea of having swimming access within the central city. I think it's a critical recreational capacity that we should have, but I also want to observe the amount of tragedy there is around drowning in the Portland metropolitan area. I think we need to be really thoughtful and cautious as we implement this kind of stuff.
I'd like to get back to Chris's point. I'm not sure I heard definitively that this would be a public resource and not privatized.
It's a good question.
I think that's an important.
Nicholas Stern, I believe all of that land is publicly owned. We generally do
Right.
not apply the OS zone to privately owned land, with a few exceptions like cemeteries.
Because that's waters of the nation, waters of the state. It's not really the cities. That's why the agencies are all going to be involved. At any rate, I think it's an issue that I hope we could address.
Okay, so
I believe that OMSI is within that open space area, but I don't believe that there are any other private owners along the riverfront there. But we could make a special, we could restrict it to just public entities.
And is Parks actually on board with this?
Yes.
They see
they are.
themselves as being engaged? Because I know there's been a lot of back and forth between them and Human Access. Okay.
for what it's worth, I don't necessarily, if OMSI wants to have a swim platform and take on the liability of that swim platform and then charge for it to boot, you know, all the more power to them. I guess I personally am not concerned about that, but that doesn't mean that others aren't. So is there any more discussion items? And if not, could we have a motion?
I guess I would move, I would like to do that amendment because I don't know whether the state reviewers would care whether someone decided to make the case to them to have 4 hot dog stands and then blocks out everybody else from the opportunity, including public owners. So I would move an amendment that it be publicly owned added to the list of criteria. So I guess I'm moving to support this motion with the amendment that it be publicly owned.
Second.
So moved. Any additional discussion?
Yeah, question, Eli. You saying that the facility, the dock facility itself would have to be publicly owned, or or are you talking about public accessibility to the facility? And
I guess I'm saying publicly owned and trusting that if it's publicly owned, then they'll provide access to the public. It's a fine line, I guess.
So if I'm a private business, I happen to own a bunch of these floating docks, can I lease it?
I think if public entity owned a bunch of the private docks, they could lease it to you as a private. But there's
So the
be some
city
public
can't lease
process
it-
involved
The
in
city
that.
couldn't lease it for my business because I would own the dock and I'm a private
Yeah,
business.
I'd rather not have a situation where some, or private companies go and they jump on here and get approvals from the state for 4 private docks. They box out the public from owning any of them. And then and then the public never gets any platform you can jump off of or
I'll make a
finance.
suggestion, Eli, and why I'm
Sure.
not comfortable with your motion. This is a new idea. All we're doing as the owners of the code is suggesting, here's how we see floating docks might work. We've limited their size, we've limited their location, we've limited their time frame in which they can be there. They have to be, we've got some basic criteria. I would urge us not to start overthinking how this might happen, because who knows if, how, and when this might happen, and allow the Parks Bureau and the other agencies that control this to let it play out. If there are problems, it'll come back, if not to us, to somebody else. But I'd rather not have us start without any basis, any tangible knowledge of how this is going to work, start limiting it. So I'm not going to support your motion.
What if I submitted just as a written discussion base, what if I submitted a permit application in a few days from now to Department of State Lands proposing that you can, 4 fishing docks there, and you can pay me money, or maybe I'd be willing to lease it to the city if I felt like it.
Michelle would like to jump in, I think, and explain how this works.
What I think would happen is if you as a private person went to the state and said you want to do 4 lots, that you would, the state would then contact the adjacent property owner that we've heard in the majority of cases is the city. And the city would have the opportunity to say, no, I want to put that area to beneficial use. And so they would have the opportunity to take that location as well. I'm not sure that this is really going to be this huge hot dog empire building enterprise. Just if nothing else, because you've got to take the dock out every year. You can only have it in for a few months. I mean, I wonder if there's a way, if the city's going to get into this, you can sort of set up your state and federal permits so it's over time that you don't have to have continuous opportunity. Because if you have to redo this every year, it's just going to be a logistical nightmare. I mean, I don't think we need to do all, I think we're overthinking it, frankly.
I have to agree, I think we're overthinking it.
I don't think we're overthinking it. And it's not because I'm trying to build a hot dog empire here. It's because we've already okayed in parks commercial activities, and we said that was okay. And Parks was okay with that and wanted to generate the money and was willing to take the risks on everything already. So I don't think it's a large extension to say that you have a water activity that is a business. I mean, I don't think there's 4 of them, but I do believe there's potentially one of them, and that if it really is, the intent is really swimming and recreational use, then public ownership gets to that point. If it's really first come and we'll see what happens and we'll fix it on the back end, then it's not a recreational use. That's not the intent. And that's my view.
It seems to me we could add a purpose statement to this that would talk about the purpose of this is for swimming and water-based recreation.
Chris?
Yeah, so process-wise, I think this will work better if we have a clean vote on the private versus public aspect. So I will offer an amendment to remove the public condition from Eli's motion. I agree that a purpose statement would be very useful, and I think substantively, I think all the factors that have been described rig this enough in the direction of public applicants that, I'm willing to leave a loophole there where if a private applicant can come along with something creative that meets the purpose statement, and, they should have a chance to compete in a landscape that's already rigged against them. So if they come up with something that passes that, I'm willing to entertain it.
Thank you.
So I guess I need a second for my amendment.
The amendment, right?
Yes, which needs a second. Yes, but Eli's got the main motion on the table, so I'm amending his motion back to the staff proposal.
Just a process question, how would we add the intent statement, I guess, or policy statement?
It seems to me you could just direct us to add that to the code, and then as soon as we finish with this, we'll talk about May 23rd, and we would come back to you with a whole document that would have all these amendments in it.
Okay, do we have a second? If not,
So the second is just to say that.
on the amendment.
Public or private could.
Right.
Great. Any further discussion? If not, Chris, you will help me with this. I assume we vote on the amendment first and then Eli's?
Yep.
Okay. So, Julie, please call the roll.
Backrack,
So I am voting aye to return to the original proposal.
correct.
Aye.
Baugh,
Yes.
Hauk,
Yes.
Larcell. Yes. Oxman,
Yes.
Judd,
Yes.
Smith,
Sorry, Eli, yes.
Feback.
Yes. Well, we got the purpose statement in there, right?
Yeah.
We'll get it in there, yes.
St. Martin, yes. Schultz,
Yes, so that motion passes on the amendment. Now we still need to vote on the original motion, which is now to add the layer of it has to be public.
Right, and I will offer an amendment to direct staff to add a purpose statement, so we're crystal clear that reflects swimming and recreation.
Second.
So well, basically what we put on the table is it's allowed to be public or private. I mean, it's just allowed as staff recommended with the purpose statement added. Now I think it's modifying, okay, it's allowed, but we're only allowing a public use.
Wait, I'm getting confused about where we are process-wise.
I think that's what we're working out, Gary.
Okay,
Hold on.
so do we still have an amendment on, Eli's amendment on the table that demands public ownership?
No, we finished the vote on.
Maybe I
purpose.
withdraw my amendment. I mean, I feel like I don't understand enough about the way state permits this thing and who has authority to go in there to craft something clear about my intent any better than a policy direction the staff would come up with. So short of understanding the who can be an applicant, who controls that water, that kind of stuff, I'm gonna withdraw that amendment proposal and let it slide with just the staff intention language.
Okay, and the second, and I can't remember who seconded it. Was it you? Okay, that's been withdrawn then. Okay, we're through that confusion
Well, I don't think we have a main motion anymore.
because we had an amendment to an emotion.
Right. So let me try. So I move approval of the staff proposal with the addition of a purpose statement reflecting swimming and recreation.
Second. That's what I thought I was seconding.
Question on the motion. Does before I ask my question, if someone applies to do this, let's say it's a private party, and it's adjoining public land, so they're gonna have to come to the city to get input. What agency at the city would respond? Would Parks?
Bureau of Development Services would be reviewing this application.
Reviewing it.
But wouldn't Parks have to agree since they own the adjacent land?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm saying. Who speaks for the city's ownership of the adjacent lands? It's the Parks
The
Bureau.
Parks would speak for Parks Land, yes.
So we've already told Parks, in some limited circumstances, we concur with your right to kind of consider commercial uses of parkland. Correct? But now what we're saying is, but when it comes to the water, we want to better define what commercial uses? Is that what, I mean, does recreation include a hot dog stand?
Well,
Why not?
we didn't make any.
Why don't we, I guess my concern is, I think this is a Park Bureau determination. If someone wants to privately put in a dock or floating platform, and they go to the Parks Bureau and say, I got a clever idea, I'm not sure by code we should be trying to decide what's a good clever idea and what's a bad clever idea. we've given the Parks Bureau the authority, the jurisdiction, I believe, to view what's a reasonable commercial use of.
We've done nothing to prevent that at all. We haven't prevented that in this process.
Okay, but
Well, I think Jeff's concern is we add a purpose
what
statement,
direction are we
we're
telling
adding
when
more
we're saying
limitation.
Swimming and recreation. Are we trying to define recreation?
That's the intent.
So,
I
so
wonder if-
no, no commercial use.
We didn't say that.
It just says the purpose, so if I'm understanding, we're saying the purpose of the swim platform is for recreational
Right.
purposes. That doesn't mean, let's say, somebody couldn't sell flippers as they're sitting on the platform. They're still, the point is that we're here to swim.
All right, okay.
We did nothing to prevent that.
I'm getting away from hot dogs because I think it's going to be flippers.
Yeah.
Is that correct, that we all agree that we think that that would still be allowed? Gary, go,
Yeah,
you have a question?
I'm just, I think the more likely scenario is we're going to have a private group like the River Access Project that wants to put something like this up and is not necessarily a for-profit organization, but rather is non-for-profit and community-oriented. I want to make sure we don't reduce that possibility in the community, that we allow for that to happen if it's appropriate and appropriately regulated.
Good point.
We haven't done that either.
I don't think so.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, let's call the roll. I'm not seeing any. We are
voting on the main motion, or are we voting on?
we are now voting on a motion, which is basically the same, the amendment, but we're voting on it as a motion now.
Say yes to docks with a purpose statement.
Right.
Yep.
There you go. Did you all hear that? We're
Yes.
saying yes to docks with a purpose statement. Okay.
And the purpose statement is it's primarily for swimming and recreation.
Yep.
Correct.
Primarily, okay.
Primarily, or the purpose is for swimming?
Purpose
and
is
recreation?
primarily for swimming. and
I'm happy with primarily as a qualifier. You're not? No.
It's as the language reads.
There's no
Okay.
language there. We're deciding on the language.
Well, we're directing staff to write a purpose statement.
Support water recreation.
Right.
Fine. To support water recreation. I can live with that. Is that Chris?
It's acceptable to me.
What?
I'll consider that a friendly amendment.
I mean, it's what the staff does have.
We support water recreation.
All right.
Okay. I think we've concluded with that.
Yes.
Julie, please. Let's.
This is another tough one. Yes.
Yes.
Howe.
Yes.
Larcell.
Yes.
Oxman.
Yes.
Rudd.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Feeva.
Yes.
St. Martin.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes. Whew. Motion passes. Okay.
Okay. So just one quick last item, and that is that on May 23rd, we will be asking you to vote. I've been working with the Chair Schultz and Michelle Rudd about the particular votes, because they have both recused themselves from various votes. So the plan is that you'll take 3 votes. One vote will be related to a number of river-related things that Michelle will recuse herself from. Another vote will be related to some FAR and height decisions, and that's Chair Schultz will recuse herself, and then there'll be a vote on all of the remaining items in the plan, and that you will all vote on. So that's the plan for the vote. We will be, we're creating a guide to the decisions that you've made, both by work session and by volume, so that you'll see that, and so you can cross-reference if you have questions about where something came from or when you talked about something. And then we will be providing you with full revised staff proposed drafts of 2 of the volumes. The volume 2A1, which has all of the plan district code in it, and the second one is 2A2, which has the rivers, trails, and scenic resource code in it. So you'll have new versions of those, and then you'll have a guide to the rest of the decisions to help you understand what you're voting on.
Thank you very much, Sally. You've done a great, phenomenal job getting us through this process. Your organization's been phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. Point of information, can I ask what the current estimate is for council consideration of this?
We're looking at the end of July for hearings,
End of July. Thank
and
you.
then work sessions in the fall.
If there's no other questions, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there.